261,000 jobs, though that was less than revised job growth numbers for September. The unemployment rate inched up in October to 3.7%, and average wages last month were up 4.7% from a year ago, though they have softened, which could somewhat ease upward inflation pressure. This as many businesses still struggle to find workers, including Robert McKiernan, owner of a holiday lights company in Arizona.
Now I'm having the dangest time hiring people. Finding people to work, good people, is next to impossible.
He says between rising gas prices and fewer customers, it's getting tough. Twitter employees are bracing for widespread layoffs today as new owner Elon Musk overhauls the social platform. They're expected to be notified this morning via email. Thousands of the 7,500 employees are expected to be laid off. Musk already fired the company's top executive, including the CEO, on his first day as Twitter's owner. Wall Street trading higher at this hour. Dow up 513 points. The Nasdaq is up 139. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in studio today. With just 4 days until the midterm elections, I want to let you know that today is the last day for early in-person voting. According to the Secretary of State's office, as of yesterday afternoon, over 855,000 voters had already cast ballots in this year's races. That includes 152,000 who voted in person over the past 2 weeks. And when you do the math, it comes out to a turnout so far of 17.5%. Massachusetts Department of Public Health reported 5,569 new confirmed coronavirus cases and 69 deaths in the past week. The data also shows that 634 patients were hospitalized with COVID-19 as of yesterday, putting the 7-day positivity rate at 5.9%. The DPH also says that as of Wednesday, nearly 145,000 vaccinations, including booster shots, had been administered within the week. State lawmakers creating a special commission to study the environmental and economic impacts of discharging radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay. State Senator Susan Moran created legislation in an effort to bring more transparency into the decommissioning of the Pilgrim Power Station in Plymouth. Plant owners Holtec have proposed dumping 1 million gallons of contaminated water into the bay. The new commission will have 2 years to create the report for 2024. Holtec wouldn't be able to discharge the water until 90 days after that report is concluded. 62 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Little Passports, designed to help children discover the world with hands-on activity kits delivered monthly for ages 3 and up. Learn more at littlepassports.com/NPR.
I'm Henry Santoro, off to the Boston Public Library for BPR.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are live at the Boston Public Library, as we are every Tuesday and Friday, next week actually, Tuesday and Thursday at the Boston Public Library. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Good morning.
Jim.
Jim.
How are you, Marjorie?
I'm very well, Jim.
You know what I always say, Marjorie? You know
What do you
my
always
slogan?
say?
You've always heard me say, if climate change is going to destroy the planet, at least let it be 70 degrees in November. This is unbelievable, isn't it?
My tropical flowers, my mandevillas, are still alive.
Really?
Creeping across my porch. Yeah, I mean,
very
it is.
exciting.
I'm very happy for the flowers, but I'm kind of sorry for the planet. Anyway.
Okay, so in any case, our question to begin the show is quite simple. I think you'd agree. What is wrong with white women? The number is 877-301-8970. What are your thoughts on some recent numbers on the voting habits of white women in general and suburban white women in particular? According to the latest polling from the Wall Street Journal, it found that suburban white women favor Republicans in congressional races by 15 percentage points. That's a 27-point swing since August. As for white women in general, Renee Graham wrote in the Globe recently, she noted that white women had voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. Here's what she wrote. They will reject the party that wants to codify abortion rights, ban assault weapons, and restore voting rights, and they will support the party of insurrection and its sympathizers, which manufactures grievance, condones racism, and ardently clings to the lie that the 2020 presidential election must have been stolen. Again, the text and phone line is 877 301-8970, and we've never had a simpler question. What is wrong with white women? We'd particularly like to hear from white women who can do a little self-diagnosis. 877-301-8970. And by the way, if you think this move, this trending towards the election deniers and the anti-abortion forces is a good thing for white women, your call is welcome as well.
Well, she has a theory about why white women...
Renee does.
Yes, she does. She thinks it's to preserve white privilege and white supremacy and white power is basically what she says. When it comes down to it, that matters more than anything. I hope that's not true, but that's what her theory is. And she also points out, this is a great piece, that only twice since 1952 have a majority of white women voted to support the Democratic choice for president. One was Bill Clinton, which a lot of people thought had to do with Bill Clinton being good looking.
And the pickup truck.
And Lyndon Johnson, I don't think many people thought that he was that good looking, but he was the vice president to JFK, so maybe that's why people voted for him. I mean, he turned out, Vietnam was a big problem for LBJ, but he did a lot of other great things.
He did indeed.
When he was the president. So I didn't even realize that. That is pretty bad. And as she does point out, it does, I'm a white woman.
You are.
I am. I find it odd that women keep repeatedly voting for someone like Donald Trump.
Well, by the way, the good news is they'll have Trump to vote for, because the reports this morning are he will be declaring his candidacy, CNN has it right now, possibly the third week of November, November 14th is earliest. You have to explain something to me before we get to the calls and the texts. I've asked you this before with other polls. I mentioned in the lead to this thing, suburban women, according to the Wall Street Journal polling, favor Republicans in October by 15 percentage points. Just 2 months earlier in August, they favored Democrats by 12 points. 27-point swing in 60 days. Can you explain that?
Well, my guess, and this is just a guess, is that back in the summertime, things were better for the economy. Democrats were doing better in general, and it was closer to the decision to get rid of Roe v. Wade.
That's a very good point.
So people were really mad about it at that time, and I think that things may have faded. You think about...
So the right to get an abortion mattered a lot in July and August. We don't give a damn about it in October.
Well, there's another theory that the right to abortion is not gone yet. And so the idea that that you have to travel hundreds of miles and you may have to go out of state, you may have some terrible medical issue that they won't deal with because they're afraid, the hospital's afraid, the doctor's afraid of being arrested. You may have to travel, even with a wanted pregnancy, hundreds of miles to different states to deal with a dying fetus or a dead fetus. You can still get an abortion, and that's one of the theories, that because it's not gone yet. That's going to be very interesting. It's on the ballot in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer State, and it's going to be very interesting to see how much that drives the vote, because she's supposed to win, but it's close, right? It's close. And the person she's running against, another woman who's a Republican, is pro-life with exceptions only for the life of the mother. So we'll see how that goes in Michigan.
Now, by the way, just to give you a sense, we looked up these numbers. While white women voted for Donald Trump in 2020, 53 to 46. Do you have any idea what the split amongst black women was in 2020 on Trump and Biden?
Black women never get it wrong.
96 to 5.
I thought it was 95 to 5, but that's still pretty good.
96 to 5.
They are not fooled. They are not fooled. Or they're not worried about protecting white supremacy, Jim. That could be the other
Can
theory.
I add one more thing to this? I learned this from Larry Tribe, probably the most famous constitutional law professor, when he was on TV with me with Nancy Gertner a few weeks ago. If Trump is indicted and sent to jail, if he is sent to jail for insurrection-related activity, he'd be barred by the 14th Amendment from running for federal office. If he is indicted and convicted and sent to jail, for example, for behavior relating to the documents at Mar-a-Lago, not only can he run for president from jail, are you ready? He can serve as president for jail. And here's my thesis. We can also test this for you white women who call in here. By the way, men are allowed to call too, and people of color can call too. We particularly want to hear from white women. Would these white women who vote for Trump in 2016 and 2020, I mean this totally seriously, if he was in jail by November of 2024, would they still vote for him?
Well,
I'd say the answer is yes.
Because it's a witch hunt.
It is a witch hunt. And it's rigged. You forgot the rigged part.
Because it was a witch hunt, and it was rigged, and the judge was corrupt, and everybody in the jury was corrupt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, our numbers are 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. Let's start with Catherine in New Hampshire. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Catherine.
Hi, good morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
are you a white woman, Catherine?
I am. I'm a very white woman.
Excellent. So
Okay.
is Marjorie, so that's perfect. Go ahead. What's up?
Well, I just think that my observation of white women in particular, we tend to blame a lot of our problems on our mothers, a lot of our failings. There's something Freudian about that. I think it's unique to a white woman. I don't know if it's being in a patriarchal society. I don't know if it's, we're told that we have freedoms and equality. For some reason we don't, so that must be our mother's fault. But I think there's something to do with that.
Well, okay, Catherine. So how does the problems that your mother caused you relate to whether you vote for a Republican or a Democrat, though? Why?
That is the $1 million question. I don't blame my mother. I'm just saying that my mother is wonderful, but I'm saying that I just noticed, could it be that, why we voted for, why they went to Trump and not to Hillary? Why that a woman who gets an abortion is, to them, maybe subconsciously a failed mother? That's why they're making that connection. I just think it's something deeper than just whoever the politician is of that moment. No matter what the election is, somehow we have to really look deeper into what it is about mother-daughter relationships.
Hey,
in
Catherine.
society.
Catherine, before you go away, I haven't looked at maybe you have the polls closely as I should in New Hampshire. The Republican running against Maggie Hassan is both anti-choice and was an election denier until he won the nomination, then of course flipped for the general election. How are white women doing in that race? Do you have any idea?
How do they feel about him, you mean, or how are the white
No,
women-
are they leaning towards Bullock, leaning towards Hassan? If you don't know, it's fine. Do you happen to know or no?
Yeah. No, I mean, no one's changed their minds. The ones that were leaning towards him are still leaning towards him.
Yeah.
And these are women who love their men in their lives because the men took care of them better than their own mother.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
So
Loving the men in their life is really the problem. Catherine, thank you very much for your report from New Hampshire. Elizabeth from Rosendale says, I cannot listen to this segment. I'm devastated that women will abandon their right to bodily autonomy because the price of unsustainable energy source is high across the globe. The short-sightedness and disregard for our daughters makes me sad and angry, says Elizabeth. 877-301-8970.
Here's Adam from New Hampshire. While I shouldn't be speaking for suburban white women, since he's Adam from New Hampshire, he feels the need to censure callers, and Callie are going to make them out to be fascist and racist or memes. Well, I don't know what Callie's going to say about this. You locked down their kids from school for too long, along with them, which meant they were pulled from the workforce. They're having a tough time putting food in their kids' stomachs and roof over their head, and crime in certain areas. I don't think that if you're in the suburbs, you're probably not broke because you couldn't afford to live in the suburbs, at least not the ones in Boston if you were broke. But the thing that Adam says about keeping the kids out of school, I think Democrats lost a lot.
I do too.
On keeping the kids out of school.
Well, also, even though it was anecdotal, that incredible moment when McAuliffe responded to Youngkin in the gubernatorial debate down there in Virginia about essentially, I'm paraphrasing, why should parents have any say about what's happening in the school?
Yeah.
And obviously he overspoke, but it speaks to the Democrats' problem on the problem. And I think that may be what Kate in the car wants to talk about. Welcome, Kate. Nice to hear from you.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
So, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I was going to make 2 points. So,
Please.
as a conservative white suburban woman,
Yep.
I find it incredibly upsetting and even sexist to assume that we are one-issue voters.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to vote on the economy or national security, that is my right as a woman, and I should be supported by other women. Secondly, I think the point that was just raised in the text that the effects of school closures on our children is something that we are seeing, and now we have quantitative data to show how harmful it was to our kids. And that is something that's crossing party lines, and even Democratic women will not admit that they are voting Republican for this very reason.
Hey,
So
Kate,
I
I'm sorry, Kate. Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? If you had somebody
Yeah.
who was a Republican who running in a district you could vote in, who in your opinion was correct on education issues, and the Democrat was in the wrong place, but the Republican was both an election denier and anti-abortion, would you still vote for the Republican?
Yes, I would, because
Okay.
I feel like the term election denier is overused by the Democratic Party. For instance, if I question and say I don't understand how Joe Biden got more votes than any president in the history of our elections during a pandemic. For me to even ask that question, you could label me as an election denier.
Do you think that Donald Trump won the election? Do you think Donald Trump won the election?
No.
Oh, okay.
But do you admit that election denier term you could label on anybody who even asks a simple question?
No, I don't, actually.
No. I think, Kate, the election deniers are people that still deny the election,
Outcome.
even though they have no evidence. And the court has looked at these, and Republicans that supported Donald Trump have looked at these, and Republicans, all these claims are disproven. So I think that's the issue, if you still disprove them after that. But you know what I think is interesting about the abortion issue?
Kate, we're glad you called. Thank you.
I don't know if Kate is pro-life or not, but some pro-life women I do know. One of the issues for them in this is they are pro-life. They are very personally pro-life, but it bothers them, especially if they're mothers of daughters, that taking away abortion has basically rendered women as second-class citizens. Men have rights that they don't. Men have autonomy over their bodies, women don't. Men can decide what they want to do with their bodies, and women don't. And I think that's really kind of jarred them, even if they're pro-life. And the second thing that's jarred them is that where is the discussion from those who want to take away abortion about what they're going to do to support these women and these babies? Where is their efforts to go after the fathers who don't pay their child support, to the men who escape their obligation to their children, to the kind of programs?
What's the answer? You know the answer. What's the answer to the question?
There is none. I mean, the major reason why women have abortions is poverty. And that's the hypocrisy to me. I don't think the Republican anti-abortion efforts, there are people who are genuinely pro-life because they're worried about an unborn fetus or baby.
Yeah.
But this is about, that's not what the anti-choice movement in the Republican Party is about.
Suzanne and Newton, welcome to the show. Hi.
Oh, hello. I love you both very much.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that I want to speak about one suburban, I'm an urban, always have been urban white woman, liberal. So I'm all set. You don't need to worry about me.
Okay.
And but there's one person that I'm going by, and I don't know how much I can generalize, but this woman, I feel she wants to forget her past. She wants to forget, she's very wealthy. She married a very wealthy man. She hasn't worked in years. She lives a very sheltered life in a very wealthy community. And she had an abortion, and she doesn't want to talk about it. And she used to be broke, and she doesn't want to talk about it. And sometimes I wonder if she's being mostly influenced by Fox or her husband or something about, I don't know how she got the idea that Trump protected their money somehow. You know, I don't know. There seems to be a feeling that she was protected by the Trump administration.
Well, you know, also, Suzanne, just to add to this, I've told this story before, but in terms of saying I'm for Trump because all of a sudden now I'm anti-choice, we were the first people in 2016 on the radio to ask candidate Trump what his criteria for Supreme Court justices was in New Hampshire. He said they had to be pro-life. The next interviewer after us heard our interview and said, can you name any judge who would fit that criterion? Who did he name, Marjorie?
His sister.
And what is she?
Pro-choice.
Exactly. So, I mean, the notion that Trump believes in this, considering his history, is borderline preposterous. Suzanne, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Here's an interesting text. While this is from a white woman, originally from the mainline suburb of Philadelphia, Jim. That's your neck of the woods.
Sort of.
And her answer is fear of upsetting the status quo. And I think there's something to that, too.
What is that? I don't get that. What do you mean?
Well, I think that there's a sense, I mean, I told you about this interview I saw this morning with this woman who lives in Ossining, New York.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that is, but it's some suburb of New York.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how their suburb has changed dramatically.
What does that mean, non-white people moving in?
Non-white people, many Hispanics are moving in. And she said when she put a Black Lives Matter sign after the George Floyd murder, she was harassed by some of her neighbors. And her theory was that they were upset about the neighborhood changing and becoming less white. So I think that's what this texter is talking about.
I mean, in all fairness, don't you think race is at the center of a lot of this division in this country, no matter where the division is?
Yeah, that's the theory that is in Renee Graham's column. I think she's right. It's a fear of losing white privilege. Somebody emailed before. Where is he? The mailman from Rehoboth. What did he say? He said, "Yeah, hold on. Let me find the mailman from Rehoboth."
Why don't you find it during the break?
I'll find it during the break.
That's
a very good idea, Jim, because it's way back there.
My
You
pleasure.
get lots of text messages. I can't keep up with them all. Anyway, we're talking about what's wrong with white women. That's basically it. We should be talking about what's wrong with white men tomorrow.
I think
we'll
we
do
know
that
what's
tomorrow.
wrong with white men, Marjorie.
Anyway, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/.
Next time on The World, Democrats are courting the Cuban vote in Florida, and that can be a heavy lift.
People who come from Latin America and escaped left-wing dictatorships, they're not going to want to align with the left-of-center political party.
So Democratic organizers downplay liberal talking points and try connecting through Cuban culture. That story on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Kimpton Hotels, with more than 75 boutique hotels globally, including the Kimpton 9-0 and Kimpton Marlowe in Boston. Hotel amenities include live music and nightly social hours. More at kimptonhotels.com/radio. And Delta Dental of Massachusetts. Good oral health is known to protect you from heart disease, depression, and more. You can discover the connection between oral and overall health at expressyourhealthma.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Our number is 877-301-89.7. We have a very simple question today. What is the matter with white women? And we asked that question based upon two things. A Wall Street Journal poll that shows a 27-point switch from August to October about white suburban women from supporting Democrats for seats in Congress to supporting Republicans, and a column by Renee Graham the other day saying basically don't expect white women to save this democracy, citing their support for Trump over Hillary Clinton in 2016, Trump over Biden in 2020. The number is 877-301-8970. And one of the reasons why Marjorie is happy to discuss this, she hates this story, so I'll tell it. Marjorie and I were in New York City for I think it was the Republican National Convention.
Oh, don't tell this again.
Years ago.
Please,
and we were
Jim.
eating at maybe the famous Soul. What's the matter with the story?
I don't like it.
But why are you troubled by it?
I just don't like this
Okay,
story.
one of our coworkers turned to Marjorie, I'll tell it briefly, and said, Marjorie, you're the whitest woman I've ever seen. Is that
fine.
okay?
Okay.
Why are you troubled by that?
I just don't think it's a good story.
You are one of the whitest women we've ever seen.
I'm redheaded complexion.
Exactly.
And
I don't
I'm really
think that's what he
sorry
meant,
that I
but
have a
that's
redheaded
okay. Go ahead.
complexion.
What's your
Anyway,
point?
I found Nick the milkman from Rehoboth.
What did he say?
He says, "Good morning, Jim and Marjorie. White women vote for Trump because they have white children that they are trying to protect. They think the Republicans and Trump will give them a better future for their kids." That's what he thinks.
And how would they do that?
And Dave, well, I'm not sure. I don't think. By the way, they don't have a plan for inflation. But
did you hear listen to NPR News this morning? I was thinking of you. I should have texted
What?
you. Steve Inskeep yesterday he had Hakeem Jeffries for the closing argument. He's a congressperson from New York, maybe the next Speaker of the House, African-American congressman.
He's probably not going to be the next Speaker of the House at the rate.
Or
the
next
Dems
leader
are
of the
going.
Democrats. You're exactly right. If Nancy Pelosi steps down. He was the Democratic closer. The Republican closer was Rick Scott. And he asked Scott a number of times today, Republican from Florida, okay, I know the Democrats are horrible on inflation. According to you, what's your plan? The Marjorie Egan question, and what's the answer?
They have none.
No, he couldn't even come up with a phony answer.
Yeah.
Just, did one of those shifts to another, whatever, I can't remember
But
the topic.
You know what?
Another question.
Remember how much everybody hated Obamacare? The Republicans all hated Obamacare. Then they found out it was not going to be a winning issue for them when people actually got Obamacare.
Hasn't even been raised in this campaign.
But right, because they have no plan for health care. Remember, Trump is going to fix health care. But one of the things that has happened that's a good thing is more and more states, including now South Dakota, are because they realize that poor people have no health care and it's costing the state a fortune. They're finally thinking about expanding Medicaid for poor people in those states.
Explain, South Dakota, it is not the elected leadership. It is a ballot question.
Yeah.
The people
That's
in 6
right.
earlier states on the ballot, Republican states, have voted to, again, access federal Medicaid funds because their governors
their
refused
Republican legislature and or their Republican governor wouldn't do it, so the people are having to take it to the ballot so they can get health care, so they don't have to be in parking lots for free health care the couple of times a year that they come.
So anyway, the question is, what's the matter with white women? Megan in Boston, hey.
Hi.
Hi.
I have been a Democrat my entire life. Never voted for a Republican, ever. Did not vote for Trump. But I completely understand when I'm listening to the radio and I hear this question, what's wrong with white women? Like there's something wrong with them because they don't do what you guys think they should do.
Exactly.
That's just such an absurd question.
No, I'm trying to be honest here.
Well, any other group of people and said, what's wrong with them?
Well, let me give you an example why I asked that. It's not just because it's what I think. I think it's not unreasonable to say when women in this country vote for candidates who want to ban abortion nationwide, that's a little odd to me. It's sort of voting against your own self-interest. When women or men, Megan, vote for people who deny the outcome of the election, I think that's a little odd. But take it away. Go ahead.
Yeah, the abortion thing is why I've always been a Democrat. It's my one issue vote. But I can understand how the COVID extreme lockdowns have pushed parents the other way.
Yeah.
You know, elaborate on that a little bit, Megan, because I think we're getting texts on that. I read one earlier that the school is closed for that long, which was so associated with the Democrats. I think it hurt the Democrats. So elaborate on that.
I just think that COVID lockdowns and the extreme COVID fear has pushed past the scientific evidence.
Yeah.
And the harm to kids has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
And people just aren't acknowledging that.
Well, I think they're acknowledging the harm after the fact. And I think you're right to say Republican governors were much more pro-opening sooner. Democratic governors were much more for staying closed. And the facts, I don't think they did it in bad faith. You may disagree, Megan, but after the fact, you are right, and Marjorie said it too, the schools were closed for too long.
But was also in the red state's favor is that there was not a big difference. And some people said it early, this is ridiculous to keep the schools closed. And I think, Megan, one of the reasons the Democrats got in trouble is because the Democrats are in league politically with teachers' unions. And I think it was all kind of one big cabal together that kept the schools closed much longer than they should.
Hey, Megan, can I ask you one last question? We're glad you called, by the way. So you said the single issue for you through the years has been abortion. Same question I asked a caller who made similar points earlier. There are two candidates. The Republican has the right position, according to Megan in Boston, on education. The Democrat does not. But the Democrat is pro-choice. The Republican is anti-choice. Can you vote for the Republican anyway?
I just can't do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're a good call. That was a great call, Megan. Thank you for
By the way,
everything you said.
You know, a lot of women are pro-life.
I understand that.
But I think to those same women, I think the idea that you're going to put women in jail and doctors in jail and make no exceptions for rape or incest or life of the mother, all these things may be a little bit too far. I think there are a lot of women that are sincerely pro-life. Sophia from Foxborough, hi.
Hey, Sophia.
Hi.
Hi.
Jim and Marjorie, long time, first time.
We love that. Thank you.
I just can't quite place why, as I told your screener, why white women are this way, but I think everyone's kind of touched upon it, and that was the Monday morning quarterbacking of the school children education losses and stuff like that. So I think that's part of it. I can't dismiss the race part of it. I'm a suburban white woman. I, though, am in the minority, apparently, in the majority right now. But yeah, I think there's something to that. But I wish people would be a little less focused on what happened, the mistakes that might have happened in the past, and more focused on, well, who's the best for your child's future? And I just don't see that with the Republican Party. They're anti-climate, they're anti-women's rights, minority rights, LGBTQ rights. I just don't see why they can't be a little more broad in their understanding of the world. And I'm at a loss sometimes when I even speak to folks in my neighborhood.
You know, Sophia, I think one of the reasons that so many of these Republican-leaning suburban white women, particularly those who are for the Democrats as recently as August, the Democrats, I'm not talking about women now, I'm talking about Democratic leaders, have an inability to make a mistake. If the candidate stood up and said, you want to know something? It was in good faith that I urged the schools to stay closed through X, but in retrospect, if I had it to do over again, I would do it differently. I made a mistake. The problem is almost nobody in politics can ever admit they did anything wrong, even if it was in good faith. And I think because they won't crack people's minds open by doing that, a lot of people are saying, I'm done with them and whatever. Sophia, thanks for your first call. We appreciate it.
Listen to this one from Maya in Newton. She says, I think it's all about white privilege. I see it all the time. She's in Newton. When it comes to tightening up the budget for the household and then deciding, can I go to the salon and get my hair done or vote for democracy? They'll always choose to get their hair done. That's what she thinks.
Pretty good one. I'm sure that offended half the audience. Kate in Roxbury, you're going to tie it up for us. Hi, Kate. What's up? Kate.
I've read parts of it, but I never.
Hey, Kate,
are you
you're
there?
on.
Are you there? Or are you talking to somebody else? Oh, I guess she's gone.
Okay.
So she's not there.
So we're done.
We're done. Okay.
Well, actually, we're going to broach this with Callie to get her perspective on it.
That's
too
right.
In a couple of
I don't
minutes.
think we should say what's wrong with what.
I said it already.
Let's say what's up. What's up?
Okay,
with them?
you say what's up.
with
I'll
them?
say what's wrong.
All right. We are
Because
moving
as
on.
that caller said, they're not doing it the way I want them to do it. So that's the basis for the unfair question.
Okay. Up next. Who are we talking to next, Jim?
We're talking to Shirley Young.
Shirley Young.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Shirley Young is next. She's going to talk to us about business news. She's got a great breakdown of question one. If people are confused
Fact
about
checks.
question none on the TV ads, I'm so glad she's going to
Great.
talk about this. Shirley Young from the Boston Globe is up next. You're listening to 89.7 GBH Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
I am Tibisay Sea, host of Salud. Comer la comida equivocada puede poner nuestra vida en peligro. La comida chatarra es un gran problema porque está por todos lados y a veces se disfraza muy bien de productos saludables. En el próximo episodio de Salud nos vamos al supermercado con una dietista y una nutricionista para aprender a comer mejor. Listen tomorrow morning at 9:30 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Mission Safe, a youth development organization committed to reducing violence and ending generational poverty among young people in Boston. Details at missionsafe.org. That's missionsafe.org. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing the latest therapies and cancer specialists who are experienced in your cancer. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Now, assuming she has finished wiping down her headphones, we are joined by Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young. You done wiping them down?
I'm done. I couldn't
welcome.
put the thing on
Whatever.
it. It was like weird.
Nice to see you, Shirley. How are
Good
you?
to see you.
Okay, Shirley Young, let's talk about the legislature finally, in a lightly attended informal session, sending back to Governor Baker a nearly $3.8 billion spending bill. Do you hear that, Jim, the lightly attended informal session?
Well, but they did. I mean, Baker has been saying to us month after month, Governor Baker in our studio, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So what'd they do?
Well, maybe it's easier to talk about what they didn't do.
No, I wanted to get to that too. You want to start with that?
Well, yeah, let's start with that. I mean, they gave more money for hospitals, physically strained hospitals. They gave more money for electric vehicles, reproductive rights. But one big thing, it was a little bit, right, and they spent down the surplus, but they didn't get tax relief done. Right, they waited.
Baker's plan.
They didn't get that done. They're going to leave that. That was a big surprise. It was a big surprise to me. They're leaving that for the next governor.
It's not a surprise.
Why? Was it a gift?
Here's what they did. I mean, the fact that it's not, with all due respect to the
Yeah.
Globe, and they did fine reporting on this, they're hiding the Democrats, who were on a 5-month recess. I don't know if people are aware of that. 5-month recess. The Democrats are arguing, well, we don't know about the financial situation because of the tax cap money being returned. They know exactly what the situation is. You know what the deal is? They don't want the tax cuts to happen on Charlie Baker's watch. They're going to pass the exact same tax cuts in February or March on Maura Healey's watch, so the Democrat gets credit.
A gift.
As opposed to,
Yes.
and by the way, she supports the Baker tax cuts, as opposed to Baker, who's been fighting for these things. By the way, I'm not crazy about the tax cuts, but most people in the state are crazy about the tax cuts, and they only did it for political reasons, which stinks.
That does stink, and that was I was thinking it's a gift to Healey. You know, and I mean, I also thought was interesting about, you know, a lot of people knew that they were going to pass. You know, there's a lot of buzz they were going to do something. They have to do something, you know, I thought it was very interesting. They spent down the surplus, you know, right before voters have to go to the booth and decide whether or not to raise even more revenue. And so through question 1. And so I think because one of the opponents' messages, right, those who oppose question 1, the bill to raise taxes on wealthy, is that we have a huge surplus. And so why do we need more money? But now the surplus is being spent down.
You know, speaking of surplus, can I ask you one more question before Marjorie gets to her points about this? As early as Tuesday, what day is today? Friday? 3 days ago, the tax cap was supposed to kick in, and people who file their taxes electronically were supposed to start getting whatever 14% of what they paid last year. Did either of you, do you file electronically or you don't know?
Yes,
probably?
I do.
Did you get your money in your account?
I don't know.
How about you, Shirley?
I don't think I'm same answer. I don't know.
Did anybody get their tax cap money in the audience? Actually, some people
someone
have.
did.
Well, okay.
I'm going to talk to that guy.
Okay, so
We're
stick
looking
around
people
for
like,
Shirley to talk
I was
to you
just
in a minute.
wondering because
no, he's not doing it. He's not talking to you. He's shaking his head. I don't think so.
I know where you're sitting. But no, they were. But I also think that was political too, right?
Of course it is.
To get the checks in the mail or deposited again. Days before you're supposed to.
It's really helping the Republicans, isn't it?
We should ask this gentleman if he has an A, if his name begins with A. Maybe they're doing it in alphabetical
I don't
order.
think
No. They said random. They said random. I think.
Oh, okay.
And I haven't heard. I was wondering when we're going to start hearing from people who have gotten the money, and so
2.9 billion. This is not the tax cut that was the permanent tax cut that was eliminated. It was the one-time return of money under this tax cap that passed on the ballot in 1986.
Before you got here, Jim.
It was the year before I got here.
Yeah, the year before.
No, as a
Otherwise,
matter of fact, my first
wouldn't have
act,
passed.
she knows this, my first act as head of the Tax Equity Alliance was to file a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the tax cap. And for people happy about getting the $2.9 million, they should be happy we lost unanimously.
Right, I was going to say unsuccessful.
7-0 we lost.
Okay.
Which is the way I'm used to losing, by the way.
So let's get to the story that I really like the best. You guys fact-checked the TV ads, and I've been complaining endlessly about the TV ads are so confusing, particularly about question 1. And actually, let's start with what is mostly false, as you found in question 1.
Oh, with me?
Remember?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got it right here.
I've watched 16. So this is the ballot question 1. Each side, if you watch local TV, there you can't
deluged.
Deluged by their ads.
Almost as much as Camp Lejeune with the contaminated water. Every time you turn on the TV,
that's a pretty important cause.
It is a pretty important cause. But I mean, my God, I've never seen so many ads.
Right.
In my life.
So 16. We watched it. There's at least 8 ads produced by each side on TV and social media. Maybe I'm sorry, it's a fog. Mostly false. Which one do you want to take on?
Tens of thousands would pay nearly double in higher taxes. That is mostly false.
Mostly false. So it's interesting. So if you see in the ads nearly double. It's an 80% increase in your taxes. But it's
for those who would have to pay the taxes.
Those who have to pay the taxes. But it's really what they say 80% increase because they're looking at it goes from 5% to 9%, and that in their mind represents an 80% increase. technically, yes, but you're not. It's really the rate, not the amount of taxes you're going to pay.
Yeah.
And
it's very few people.
It's very few people.
Well,
also, it's
only
not
2,000 Massachusetts households earn incomes above $5 million, as we just storing the Globe, in 2019. So exceedingly few residents would see their income taxes, quote unquote, nearly double.
Someone was telling me the reason why they can say tens of thousands, it's over time.
Over time.
Over many, many years, it would hit tens of thousands.
Can we play? Can we play some of these ads if people haven't been watching? Here's a no ad from the No on One campaign. The ad is called "Politicians Blank Check."
Question 1 is deceptive. Question 1 doesn't guarantee a nickel of increased funding for transportation and education. So what's the point?
Beacon Hill already has a massive budget surplus.
We don't even need it right now.
The politicians who put question 1 on the ballot are giving themselves a blank check with no accountability.
Come on, really?
I don't trust the politicians with my money.
Please vote no on a politician's tax hike amendment. Vote no on question 1.
They don't call it Taxachusetts for nothing.
Actually, I haven't called it Taxachusetts for 30 years, but that's a whole other story. So how did you rate? Let's stay with that. How did you rate that one?
Wait. That one was
Shirley wrote this piece. She has no idea.
No,
what she
we
wrote.
actually took sentences from various ads.
They're partly right there. Right?
Well,
because it doesn't guarantee the money goes
yes,
to education.
I was going to say what is true, right? What is true that there's truth in that one line. And I mean, as we point out in many of the ads, it's like they're half truths. You know, they're very rarely all true or all false, or we're all true. And so it's true. The revenue is dedicated to education and transportation, but there's no guarantee it will represent an increase. And at the same time, the legislature can, there's a line that they can, was it as appropriate?
By appropriation, meaning that technically they don't have to dedicate $1. And I have to say on this front, this is self-serving for this show. The fact that the S side, which has been brilliant, by the way, brilliant, and I talked to you about it many a time, Shirley, the one mistake I think they've made, we had Maura Healey on last week, and we asked her if the legislature, Democratic legislature, attempted to do what the Vote No people are suggesting, which is going to divert the money theoretically to go to transportation and education. Would you veto it? And she didn't equivocate. She said, yes, I would. Would you allow any diversion to minimize the... No, I would not. When she's likely to be the governor, and it's unlikely that Democrats are ever going to override a veto of a Democratic governor, it seems to me that locks up that argument, and I'm surprised. Maybe they are going to, in the final few days, that they haven't used it, but it is technically true. The legislature could divert the money if it chose to.
I mean, one of the things we point out, we talked to a BU professor, who used to run a polling company, and she did ballot campaigns, and said, "What do you think about the ads?" And she said the ads are really good, and that's why they're confusing. The Yes side has really honed their message. We're going to put teachers in the ads because people love teachers. This money will go for education. They put construction workers in the ad to kind of show that this will go to fix, roads and bridges. And the No side is really leaning heavily on blank check. You can't trust your politicians, and often
one-time millionaires.
And one-time millionaires.
You wrote about.
And so they're talking past each other. So that's why a story like this really resonates with readers, because we put them, we put them on the same.
You check the claims.
Yeah, we check the claims.
And the other claim is, after years of the very rich paying less in taxes than everyone else, they'll finally pay their fair share, which is why it's called the fair share tax, and that is mostly true.
Right, and so what's confusing is that Massachusetts has a flat income tax rate, and so how can the wealthy not pay their fair share because everybody pays the same income tax rate? Where the wealthy do pay less is when you factor in all the other local, state, and taxes like property tax, gas. So when you look at the whole picture, the wealthy do pay a lower percentage of their.
You had the lowest earning fifth of taxpayers pay 10% of their income in taxes, state and local. while the highest earning 1% pay just 6.8%. So, Bob Kraft would pay 6.8%, and
he's donating a million or so.
Yeah,
to the No
and
campaign.
people that cannot afford to do
Can
anything.
we play
are paying
Yes
10%.
in the spirit of fairness here? Here's an ad from the Yes on One campaign. Fair share from Massachusetts. You can critique that too.
It's true. The richest 1% pay a lower share in taxes than the rest of us.
Question 1 makes things fairer.
And only the super rich pay for it.
Not small businesses like ours. Question 1 will not impact 99% of home sales.
And it won't impact our retirement savings.
It raises $2 billion a year.
That money is constitutionally guaranteed to go to public education, roads, and bridges.
Question 1 holds politicians accountable so they can't spend the money anywhere else.
That's a win-win in my book. I'm voting yes on question 1 so all of our families can thrive.
So
let's talk about $2 billion. And so we've heard for a long time that if we raise taxes on the wealthy at another 4% over incomes over $1 million, this will bring in $2 billion. But a year. But that's not really true. Or we found that was half true. There's one group that says it's going to be over $2 million. One group that says calculates it's going to be over $2 billion a year. But when you talk to the state budget office, they said actually it's going to be $1.2 billion. And Tufts, Center Evan Horowitz, his group there also did analysis, and they said yes, it would raise $2 billion, but it's likely it's going to be closer to $1.3 billion because if you know this tax is coming, you would employ some accountants, some lawyers, you would employ some tax avoidance strategies. You may also even move out of the state. So it's unlikely that this will raise over $2 billion. It's more closer to $1 billion.
Two things I'd like to say. I think this comes down to, do you like teachers or do you like cranberry growers? That's essentially how I would decide.
Well, the cranberry grower, Yvonne Abraham wrote that great piece. She called the cranberry grower, and he said he's going to be fine.
Right.
So he doesn't have to worry about it.
You know what? I'm sorry, go ahead, Shirley.
But listen, I talked to John Fish. He owns Suffolk Construction. He also gave $1 million. I said, how will this tax affect you? He's like, yes, this tax will affect me substantially. But but I'm not moving out of the state.
Well, that's the thing I want to. I had a discussion with a fairly wealthy friend who's also a friend of Marjorie's about this moving issue, and I have to say, okay, so you made $10 million last year. On every extra million over over $1 million, you're going to have to pay $40,000 more. So let me understand this. Your kids go to schools they like. You like the culture in Boston. You love where you live. You've lived here for 32 years. Because I got to pay $40,000 out of $1 million, which means I only get to keep $960,000 on the state level, I'm going to pack up everything I got and move to New Hampshire? I mean, there may be some people in the margins, but that's surely not a common sort of behavior.
Who knows? I mean, the state budget office itself, prints. This was on the Secretary Galvin's website. A note to voters. That this number is going to be it's going to be unpredictable. It's going to vary from year to year, and so I think there will be some who will move. I don't.
Why aren't they doing an ad? Why isn't there an ad with some rich guy who's critical to the economy, looking at you on your television screen, saying, I provided 32,000 jobs last year, I'm moving to New Hampshire. You know why? Because he doesn't exist.
Well, I think the more common scenario is going to be people who can work remotely, who may go to Florida and have their legal residence be Florida, and then live in Massachusetts for whatever the required amount of time you have to live in Florida. That scenario.
No, but you should finish that thought. I agree with that, but you should finish it.
What's the thought?
And when their home is washed into the ocean, they'll move back. So, don't you think? I mean, they go down to save taxes, and then they come.
It is funny how people that I do know that go to Florida are getting nervous about selling their homes because they're afraid if they don't sell
One of your best friends is leaving Florida after being there for years.
Yeah, because they're afraid that their house will be worth nothing if they wait another 5 years or 10 years.
So one of the things I want to say about the ads. So, one of the reasons
it's great
why
you did this, by the way.
Yeah, it was inspired by my husband.
Oh, good for your husband.
We're he's watching the ads, like, Shirley, I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I said, one ad tells me if I sell my home, this won't affect me. Another ad tells me if I sell my home, it will affect me.
That's right.
And I
Can you explain? The dentist ad and the
No.
booze ad.
Don't start.
No,
But I mean, really,
I'm not going to.
really.
No.
I mean, who knows the right answer? And I think the Globe editorialized yes on the dentist.
I don't know what they did on question. I think they were yes on 3 too.
And yes on Q1.
That's the liquor.
No, Q1 is
this one.
Raise,
This one.
Raise the wealthy. Raise
but
taxes.
do we know about the liquor and the dentist? We don't really know what to do there, do we?
So what
The
do you say
election
to your
is on
husband?
Tuesday.
So
I'm going to do you a favor?
Yeah, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to watch all the ads. And I explained to him, the person, because they show a retiree in the ad saying, when I sell, he's sitting on the stoop, when I sell my home, I'm not going to be hit by the surtax. And we were all, and I was thinking, well, it's probably the person in the ad won't be affected, but if you're selling like a $2.5 million or $3 million home, you might be affected. You might be affected even if you sell a $1.5 million home, because it's not just because when your income, what counts as your taxable income, is not just the proceeds of the house, but also if you're still drawing a salary now, so you could get kicked into the $1 million surtax category.
The kind of idea that it's an American tragedy if you sell your home for $2.5
That's
million,
true, too.
and the tax system is so weighted in favor
That's
of the
true,
wealthy. Too. I mean, the middle class might get a little break here. Are these people? There is a moral question.
Well,
here,
no.
Isn't there?
My only beef is truth in advertising.
Right.
It's that some people who sell their homes will get hit. It's not that no homeowner will get hit.
That's correct.
That's all.
Hey, before you go, can we do a good news thing for a second? You have written, as we praise you all the time, incessantly about women helping women finally moving into high places in the business community, on boards, C-suites, that sort of thing. Tell us about these funders of women-led businesses, if you could.
So we always do a Women in Power issue at the Globe, and the editor said, will you write a story about how can female tech entrepreneurs get more funding? Startups. And I said, why don't we flip the script? Why don't we write about how women can become funders? Women can fund female startups, and female-owned businesses. And so I set out to do that story because I think a lot of women are doing well. I mean, there are a lot of women out there who are doing extraordinarily well, who've had successful careers. Maybe they have family money, and they don't think of themselves as, I can invest too. If I'm, instead of, kind of saying, why doesn't the male-dominated venture capital system give more money to women-owned businesses? Of course, that's a problem, but women can do something about it.
So what's happening?
And so women are now starting to invest in women-owned businesses. I talked to this one investor, Barbara Clark, and she was saying to me that she started investing, I think, almost a decade ago. And she was on the sidelines for a long time, and she's reading articles about male venture capitalists giving money to businesses. And she just said, you know what? She had to start listening to this little voice in her head. You know what? Barbara, just write the damn check. And so she started. So this was a story about how do you start? And so because the media is covered with like $1 million, do you have to give $1 million or $2 million or $20 million to a business? And she started out just giving $5,000, $10,000, and over the years it's grown. And I talked to another a doctor, Uzo Erlickson. She has family money, and so I love the story. She was walking around the South End. She had just during her pregnancy she had a hard time with allergies, and she found this store that sells like clean beauty products, and she loved it. And so she tracked down the owner and said, I want to invest in you know, and I give you $200,000. And I said to Uzo, what was her reaction? He said, she thought I was crazy. You know, like some random person wants to give me money, but she really believed in Folane, the store. And actually, the Folane just got acquired.
Yeah.
You know, this again.
Remember
This
we got
was
some
We were
Folane
talking exactly
at Silent Spring, because
annual
they're
meeting,
very
yeah.
big on chemicals and breast cancer, and
Yes.
they handed out these samples of
Yes,
these
clean beauty.
Yes,
Yeah, and
Chemicals
so-
in your house kind of thing.
Right,
yeah.
and so she was. So
This is skincare, though.
This is
Yeah.
skincare.
No, you're right.
And so so it was great. So she and when I talked to Tara Foley, who's the founder of Folane, and she said when she looked at her initial round of investors, the women, you know, gave the most, and also have been there, you know, with her through thick and thin, and been the best advisors to her.
You know, we're talking about women supporting women-run business. I just want to mention in 30 seconds, I had a guy on TV with me last night, Rob Hale, who runs Granite Telecommunications, and he and his wife, Karen, have given $1 million a week for 52 weeks to small nonprofits in eastern Massachusetts, sort of in the Mackenzie Scott thing. They don't file an application. They don't know the money's calling.
I didn't know it was the
They get an
Mackenzie.
email saying, do you have a minute to talk? They call back, what's up, Rob Hale or Karen Hale?
Wow.
The answer is, we'd like to give you $1 million
I
for your
didn't-
very small business.
I
Yeah.
didn't know it was a surprise. I didn't know
Yeah,
it was.
surprise.
I thought that they had to apply.
No, they didn't.
Oh,
And by the way, I
wow.
was lucky that I didn't find out till this morning that he's supporting the No on One.
I was gonna say.
Having said that, he and his wife are
businesses of
doing
Rob Hale.
a wonderful thing. You know,
Also
speaking of
give.
husbands, one last thing. We don't know what we're doing on the show on Monday. So if we can talk to your husband about what we should
Yeah,
be doing,
exactly.
it'd be really, really helpful. If
Call
you
your
can have us
husband and
go-
ask what we should do about the dentist thing.
Okay, all right, I'll
Or the
do that.
liquor
I'll
stores.
ask him about the dentist.
Shirley,
Okay.
it's a great public service you and your colleague did. It's great.
We've been speaking with Shirley Young. She's a business columnist for the Boston Globe. Up next, this morning, Oprah Winfrey gave a major
About
endorsement
time.
in the Pennsylvania Senate race against the man whose career she made on her great TV show. She endorsed Fetterman over Dr. Oz. Callie Crosby joins us for that story and much more. We're going to ask her what's up with white women, too. She's joined us for a quick break. She's going to join us after a quick break, that is. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society, performing Handel's Messiah with its triumphant Hallelujah Chorus, November 25th, 26th, and 27th at Symphony Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org. And Fallon Health, care and coverage to meet the unique and changing needs of all they serve. Care for your struggles, challenges, and triumphs. That's the kind of care Fallon Health believes in.
I'm reporter Craig Lamolt, and this is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, nearly 50 years after her murder, the woman known only as the Lady of the Dunes has finally been identified as Ruth Marie Terry. We'll speak with Andrew Cabral about this and the former state police union head convicted of taking kickbacks. Then GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen weighs in on climate protesters throwing soup at and gluing themselves to some of the world's most cherished paintings. Is it effective in raising awareness or a futile act of climate desperation? And how did they ever get unglued?
Then it's Live Music Friday. Pamela Means is a singer-songwriter touring with a show about the history and legacy of protest music. She'll join us to talk about her work and play us some songs. Plus, this weekend, it's time to turn back the clocks. Jim's favorite dead horse, which he plans to beat mercilessly into the ground today. We'll take your calls and texts. That's all ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Biden is campaigning for Democratic candidates today in California and Illinois. NPR's Ozma Khalid reports the president has been working to energize voters in the final run-up to the midterm elections.
The president is delivering remarks at a tech company in Southern California that will benefit from the passage of the CHIPS Act. That's the bill Congress passed this summer to boost semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S. He'll join Congressman Mike Levin, a Democrat who's running in a tight race for re-election. Later, the president flies to Chicago, where he'll participate in a political reception. The White House has dismissed questions about why the president is not traveling more to competitive states in these final days. The White House insists the president's message is carried beyond state borders and pointed out various officials, such as the First Lady and the Vice President, are campaigning in other states. Asma Khalid, NPR News, traveling with the president.
The Labor Department says U.S. employers added 261,000 jobs in October, fewer than a month earlier. NPR's Alina Selyuk reports the latest figures may potentially help the Federal Reserve in its efforts to lower inflation without causing an economic recession.
The unemployment rate was 3.7% in October, rising from 3.5% in September. The labor market has been resilient even as the U.S. economy has slowed down, with about 2 job vacancies for every unemployed worker, and layoffs are still rare. Last month, some of the biggest job gains were in healthcare, professional and technical services, and manufacturing, according to the Labor Department's new report. A decline in job growth could help cool off inflation if it takes pressure off employers to keep offering big wage increases. Alina Selyuk, NPR News, New York.
Twitter is expected to notify thousands of employees of layoffs today. Billionaire Elon Musk recently finalized his $44 billion purchase of the social media site, saying he plans to shrink the workforce to make it more profitable. Top diplomats from the leading economies known as the Group of Seven are worried about how Ukrainians will get through this winter. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports ministers say Russian President Vladimir Putin is bombing power plants relied on by millions of people.
Europeans fear a tough winter for themselves and worry about their own energy supplies. The Europeans are also talking about a price cap on Russian energy. They want to figure out a way to keep Russian energy flowing without Moscow getting big profits to put back into its war efforts. And none of this is really an easy task.
That's NPR's Michelle Kellerman reporting. Stocks on Wall Street are trading lower at this hour. The Dow is down 46 points. You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker concerned about the sharp divisions in American politics. Speaking at the Harvard Kennedy School last night, Baker said he believes that most people find the constant political bickering just tiring.
They're turned off by the continual war of words that dominates all forms of media, and their cynicism about politics is often the result of what they read and what they hear from their leaders.
His solution is to be more tolerant of others and to be more active by getting engaged or volunteering within your community. He says step up and get involved. Well, as we've been hearing, Twitter may be making headlines with all the talk of restructuring and layoffs since billionaire Elon Musk took over the company. A class action lawsuit was filed yesterday in San Francisco against the platform over Musk's plan to eliminate about 3,700 jobs, and workers say Twitter is not providing enough notice in violation of federal and California law. Meanwhile, it's not just Twitter that's fighting battles. Amazon said yesterday it would pause adding new corporate workers, citing an uncertain economy and its hiring boom in recent years. And ride-hailing company Lyft is taking it a step further. It's eliminating 13% of its staff. And even Apple, which has outperformed most of its peers this year, is cutting back on spending and has paused a lot of its hiring. In sports, the Celtics host the Bulls at the Garden tonight. Tip-off is at 7:30. Sunny, low 70s today. A beautiful day to get down to the library and hear some great music with BPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Paychex. The Paychex team of professionals and compliance specialists work to help businesses automate all HR functions into one platform, so that they can instead focus on their business and their employees.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. As we do, as Henry Santoro just reminded people, every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Well, it's not every Tuesday and Friday, because next Friday, are we going to be here?
No, we're not.
Are we going to be here Thursday?
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
Oh, we are?
We are,
Okay.
yes.
Whoops.
Not us, but somebody's going to be here on Thursday.
I was
Can
close.
we do that again?
I was half right.
No, you got half of it right.
Half of it right.
We will not be here next Friday.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, we'll be here sort of on
Okay.
Thursday. In any case, speaking of what Henry also mentioned, we have wonderful music in the 1 o'clock hour, and we're ending today's show with the most important discussion we ever have twice a year, which is, should we make daylight saving time, there's no S on saving, permanent? The answer is yes, despite the abomination
That's right.
that is about to happen on
We've
Sunday.
discussed this 20 times. You know why, Callie? Because Jim is obsessed with
Exactly.
it. That's right.
Speaking of Callie, she is GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie joins us. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6. Also the host of Basic Black, which airs Friday at 7:30. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Hello, Callie Crossley.
Hello, Jim, and hello, Marjorie.
Yeah,
Hello, Callie Crossley. So there's been a lot of talk about Oprah Winfrey because Oprah Winfrey made Mehmet Oz a star. He appeared over and over again on her TV show before he started his own TV show. Was she going to say something? She, better late than never, has endorsed John Fetterman over Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania. What do you think?
Well, is it better late than never? I mean, I just think it's so late. I mean, I think we have to acknowledge that people are voting weeks and weeks in advance. So, you know, she's speaking to a population perhaps of undecided voters, but at the very last minute, and I don't think the numbers as the political analysts have said to us are way up for early voting. So a lot of people have already cast their ballots. Now, that's not saying that her endorsement maybe would have moved, but who knows? On this very show, I've heard it mentioned many times. Why isn't she saying something? Because he would not be Mehmet Oz TV star without her. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
She could have said something a long time ago.
And I think people trust her.
Well, some do. I mean, we don't know anymore. I don't know.
Can I tell you what the conventional wisdom is on people like Oprah making an endorsement, or people like Biden giving that speech on democracy the other night? It doesn't change minds.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it gets the base who support what Oprah's position is or what Biden's position is, who are sort of empathetic about apathetic about the whole thing. I am going to go now because Oprah or Biden, who I respect, tells me to do it. I'm with you, though. Can you give us a quick mind reading? Why didn't she do this in more timely fashion?
Well, I've been trying to think about it, and I thought, well, first of all, saying it now is a strategic move as well. So we have to assume all of it is connected to some kind of strategy. So either she was advised or she thought herself that saying something earlier. Now, by earlier, I mean even before he was a candidate, there was something to be said about distancing.
About Oz himself.
Yes,
Yeah.
about
That's a very good
distancing
point.
herself from what he had become and what he was doing on his show. I mean, she pretty much prides herself on authenticity and being real
That's a
and
great point.
being, and telling people what is and whether it's good or bad. So to have watched him sort of build up this whole thing well past beyond when she was having him on her shows and to say nothing was always odd to me. I mean, listen, I wouldn't want to be in her position to have to say something, but it seems incumbent that she should have said something earlier. So I can only figure out that it's, maybe not to anger people, because remember when she first entered politics on behalf of Obama?
I remember the
people
day.
were mad. They were like, don't say nothing. Just stay out of it. We would like for you to do what you do, but not be political in any way.
Can I tell you something? I feel this way about people in high places like the Oprahs of the world, whether they're on the right or the left. The infamous line that I've always hated, even though he says he didn't say it verbatim, is Republicans buy sneakers too. Why Michael Jordan, arguably the most popular person on the planet not too long ago, never got involved. You do have a risk when you are
Not
somebody
Oprah
like
Winfrey.
No, I think you do.
What?
I think
What's
you do.
the word? What's
You
the
mean she
risk?
can afford to lose?
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
something. And the reality is, if you have the bully pulpit, use the damn thing.
Right.
What's the point? And even though I had contempt for virtually every word that came out of Kurt Schilling's mouth on virtually everything, the guy was willing to be hated because he believed in something. And my attitude is use the pulpit. So,
well, usually when people are strategizing around these sticky issues, it has an economic focus.
Yeah.
This does not have any.
That's a good point.
She has no economic
That's a very good
liability.
point. You're a very
So
good
it's
point.
very confusing to me, and maybe one day she'll speak about it. But actually, if she hadn't been doing this forum on her own network, maybe it wouldn't even have come up at all. We don't know.
So, Callie, speaking of politics,
Yes.
we'd like a brief thought from you. We posted a question to our listeners in the 11 o'clock hour that offended a few of them, and it was quite simple. What is wrong with white women? And it was premised on the notion that they have flipped 27 points from leaning Democratic in Congress in August to Republican now, and the piece that Renee Graham wrote the other day mentioning the fact that if you think white women are going to save democracy, forget about it, citing the fact that they supported Trump against Hillary Clinton and they supported Trump against Biden by an even larger margin. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, first, let me say that I want to be authentic to myself and say I don't have the agency to speak for white women, okay? I'm going to have some white women speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So let me start there.
Okay.
Okay? Because come on, white women, don't be speaking for me. Come and ask me. So having said that, if these polls and the analysis is correct, and actually I read Renee Graham's column and was surprised that history has spoken that the only times that an aggregate number of white women have voted for the Democratic Party. Now you can argue whether that was twice.
Clinton and Johnson.
Which was a little surprising to me.
Me
I just
too.
I didn't have that history.
Me too.
So I don't know. I'm confused because as she lays out and many other people lay out, there are some clear issues of white women I know who are very concerned about issues that are not supported by first of all, election deniers, just people who just say Biden didn't win. I mean, again, maybe my demographic of white women that I interact with, they're appalled by that. So I'm confused. But obviously there is data here, and we got to react to the data. And I don't understand it.
Well, I have
really
to say,
don't.
I understand it a little bit more than I did before we did our segment. If you were to survey, we had hundreds of texts. I mean, I couldn't believe how many there were. And virtually every call that either said I was offended by your question or you don't understand what you're talking about said it's about education issues around COVID and the pandemic and the closing of schools. And you've talked about this.
Yeah, but a lot of other people just said it was just racism.
Race, yeah, I was going to say the second issue.
It was just white women protecting their white privilege and
well, that's what Renee is saying.
Yeah, that's what Renee is saying. And I was talking about this piece I saw this morning about a suburb in New York that had been a white suburb, and more Hispanics are moving in. People didn't like it.
Right.
And the woman that they interviewed, a white woman, was saying, that's what's going on here. It's people being worried about I don't know if they're worried about the great replacement theory, but they're worried about having a no longer a majority white town.
All right. So I would also say, just in general, I'm always surprised when any person or groups vote against self-interest. So I'm puzzled by that.
Yeah.
And just bottom line, there's some self-interest that don't line up with some of the people they're supporting, and I've never been able to understand.
Well, the first book that I ever read on that, we had him on the show, and of course I can't think of his name, Jamie. What's the Matter with Kansas?
Oh, Putnam.
Thomas Frank, is that his name?
Thomas Frank.
Yeah.
He started that sort of piece of scholarly writing. What's the name of the woman who wrote about the people in Louisiana?
Oh, Arlie Hochschild.
Yeah.
Yeah, her basically saying that Louisiana is the most polluted state in the country, and people are dying of cancer left and right, petrochemicals and all that kind of stuff. And her theory was that they just need a job. They just need a job. So if these companies are going to pollute the hell out of us, and we're all going to die of cancer, well, you know what I got to eat.
Well, and if you're I take it with because I've seen some evidence of this about the racism piece of it. That is a tough nut to crack, don't we know it? Here we sit just a few decades past enslavement. So listen,
but it's always interesting when you look at where black women. I mean, was it 95-5 in terms of people
96 to 5
for voting for did not vote, needless to say, for Donald Trump. So there's a lot of black women that are in very not great financial situations, and they managed to vote.
Well, look, all we have is, now I can speak for myself and so some cohort of black women, are these rules and regulations and laws that may offer some protection. And even with that, as we have seen in these divisive times, you are pushing up against it to have some protection, because racism is tough. And it's hard to fight back against it, but it's even harder if you don't have that protection. I recall Martin Luther King saying, okay, if you want to be in your house and call me whatever name you want to call me, but when I have a law to protect me, I am in a better position. And absolutely, that's what's going on here. You know, when black women don't necessarily love Democrats or even love some of the candidates, but they have to look at the issues and say, how will I have any hope of having my child protected or my family or myself if, you know, these are very fundamental issues that have to be addressed. So if that's not something you have to worry about and you can actually afford, and I'm using that in the broadest sense, to be racist, well, then you can make other decisions.
We're talking to Kelly Crossley.
So I know you're a big basketball NBA person, Kelly Crossley.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm right on top of that.
There has been a development with the Brooklyn Nets with the coach, and Jim's going to address that too, and with Kyrie Irving involving his anti-Semitic posts and seemingly feelings. What do you think?
Well, first of all, because I'm so on top of this, I don't remember this. Didn't Kyrie Irving refuse to get vaccinated?
He did.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, we're back to this having some long-term impact. So he's got a lot of stuff going on for him. I really don't get this. This is an economic issue for him. If nothing else, shut your mouth. I just don't get it. I mean, really?
Yeah.
Seriously? And when several people have come to you and said, and I'm sure some of his teammates did as much and said, you know, this is beyond harmful. We are now talking about, you know, at a time when violence is being perpetrated on people who practice this faith. This is not something you can casually throw out and just say, you know, well, what?
Well, we should say.
It's a little. I'm not getting it.
Well, for those who don't know the underlying story, the thing that he's in a little bit of trouble. He used to be with the Celtics briefly, now with the Brooklyn Nets, and he didn't get vaccinated. It's true last year. He won't say, I think, now whether he is or not. He retweets a link to a film, an anti-Semitic film. I think it's called Hebrews Through Negroes. Or
Wake Up Black America.
Yeah, Wake Up Black. And in addition to everything else, it is a Holocaust denial film. Speaking of denial, he refused to apologize for this. Still refusing to apologize, he decided to donate $500,000 to a good cause, and I think we all know $500,000 when you're making $40 million a year is not a huge amount of money. He refused to apologize still, and because he did, the Nets finally suspended him for 5 games, and after they did, he then, of course, profusely apologized. To me, that's not a very sincere apology, only after you're losing, as you say, whatever it is, 1/16 of your annual income. And good for them for suspending him. And if any other team picks him up, in my opinion, shame on him, which relates to the coach. And this is so enraging to me. Ime Udoka, who was this spectacular young coach, who most people think without him, the Celtics would not have made it to the NBA Finals, gets suspended for a year, which is almost unheard of, for some inappropriate conduct with a female employee of the Celtics. Now, the first complaint I have about this is the writers who were so clueless, the sports writers, who referred to it as a consensual relationship because the Celtics did, where by definition, if she is down the chain, which she is, because no one's above him or equal to him on the team except the owners, it's not consensual. That's one. Two, he's suspended for a year because he has posed some risk to women.
Right.
And in this year-long suspension, the reports are, I don't think it's happened yet, and Jamie, you can find out if it has, he's hired allegedly, again, it's not final, but good reporters at the Globe and at ESPN have said it, to coach the Nets, meaning the shortest one-year suspension in history. And the question that comes to me, what is the statement that makes to women who work in offices for the Brooklyn Nets? He's a threat to women in the Celtics operation, but he's not a threat to women who work for the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, I think we can put the two things together and say, what is the message, period, about what is someone doing a level of harm that really does end up with some serious consequences. And I guess the answer is there's nothing that we've seen yet. Because to your point, $500,000 for Kyrie Irving is nothing. His own statement is, I didn't mean to cause any harm. I'm not the one that made the documentary. Really? Okay. And then
I forgot about that.
Yes,
and
right. With Udoki, same thing. So the message is always to the groups who have been offended, and appropriately, I mean, there should be some appropriate response, is we're saying we're sorry, but it's not really that important, because after all, we got to play basketball. I mean, come on, people, don't get it twisted. We must play basketball.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. Can we move on to two good stories? My two really favorite stories that made me very happy today. Number one, people may remember Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Wanda Shea Moss. They get up and testify before the January 6th committee, talked about how they were targeted by Rudy Giuliani as being these election cheaters or election workers down there.
We have sound. Do you want to play?
Yes, let's
some
play
of the most powerful sound.
Really
couldn't come
powerful.
out of their house, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Let's play the sound. Where is my sound page?
It's
Here
just
it is, right
you'll
here.
see the mother and daughter who are election workers in Georgia. Here they are.
It's turned my life upside down. I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I haven't been anywhere at all.
There is nowhere I feel safe. Nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the President of the United States to target you?
So she has, both the mother and daughter have gone out and alleged in a lawsuit filed that Rudy Giuliani and other people defame them by making these false claims about them over and over and over and over again. They got a great case.
They do have a case, and I'm glad that they can go forward. You know, what about not even having the decency to do a phony, I didn't do any harm, I'm not the people that made the election machines, or something, Rudy Giuliani or, former President Trump. Really? I mean, you effectively have ruined these people's lives, and there's no accountability for it at all, and none of your even humane acknowledgement of the harm. I mean, every time I hear them, it just goes through me that all they were doing was trying to protect an election process for all of us. I mean, they're representative of all of us, which is why, as we know, election workers are going to the exits, and we can't afford to have that if we want to have free and fair elections. I mean, really free and fair elections.
Yeah. I think they've got a very good case, and I hope they get him for tons and tons of money, and I hope they get...
and I think about this personally because my parents were poll workers.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So first of all, they took us to the polls when we were little, and then they became poll workers, and, for years and years and years. I think these could be my folks. They're also doing their own job.
They're also talking about One American News Network defaming them as well. So that's like a second suit involving them because they're in trouble for allegedly defaming the voting machines. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you had two good stories.
And we should note that was the accusations were made up out of whole cloth. There was nothing that was in any way close to being real.
And the other great story is you can't sell, to read the headline, White Lives Matter apparel anymore because two black guys now own the trademark.
I tell you, isn't that a good, isn't that?
I thought that was a riot.
This is so amazing. So there are these hosts of a weekly racial justice radio program called Civic Cypher, Ramses Ja and Quentin Ward. They were approached by an anonymous, somebody who wants to remain anonymous listener, who previously owned the White Lives Matter trademark, bought it way back, and then called them and said, I bought it because I want to make sure nobody else used it inappropriately or wrongly. I want you to have it now, and that means that you can be open about the fact that you own it, but Kanye, Ye, whatever the hell his name is, ex-husband of Kim Kardashian, crazy man, whatever, cannot make a profit on this apparel.
By the way, you should say he was wearing a White Lives Matter
Yes.
T-shirt in the middle of this anti-Semitism thing of his.
Yes.
And so the assumption was he was going to make a bundle, and now he's screwed.
Of course he is.
A T-shirt with a picture of Pope John Paul II on the front and White Lives Matter on the back at a Fashion Week thing in Paris.
But I have to say, as I just love this. I love the whole justice, coming through in a way that you're not expecting on this story. Just as people have signed up to Ye's GoFundMe page, this is real, because they don't want him not to be a billionaire anymore. This is a real story. Because, when he lost Adidas and this and that, allegedly, he only has 400 million now.
Oh, gosh.
And actual people are signing up to GoFundMe so that he can get to be a billionaire again.
That's That's really touching.
You can't make this stuff up. Why are people even in writers' rooms trying to create fiction? I mean, here we are with the crazy of the craziness. Anyway.
By the way, my attitude is if they give to the GoFundMe page, their right to vote should be taken away. That's a good quid pro quo. Would you not agree?
I would agree.
What are you doing this weekend on those shows of yours there, Callie Crossley?
Well, we're doing our LGBTQ roundtable, and we're talking about some, sad news, hard news. Pennsylvania School District is being sued by the ACLU for allowing some bullying to go on against trans and non-binary kids. The good news for Tuesday is that historically there are out gay people running as candidates in every state, including the District of Columbia, for the first time ever. Now, of course, there probably were some gay people before, but they were not out.
Right.
But everybody's out now in every state. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about how divisive we are, how toxic this conversation is, and yet here we are with candidates who have presented themselves, all of themselves, and are on the ballot.
Well, before you go, I know it's a blue state, so we tend not to care about this. We're also 5 days away from the first out lesbian being elected a governor in the United States of America.
So
it's a pretty big deal.
Right. And let me just say, the second part of the show, fabulous book, my on-air book club called Bookmark, the Under the Radar Book Club, with Stacy Schiff, Pulitzer Prize winning author. Her book is called The Revolutionary, and it's about Samuel Adams. His whole story has been left to obscurity. And what I told her in our conversation, and this is true, this is how well written this book is, I read the night of the Paul Revere ride like I didn't know what was going to happen. That's how well she wrote it. That's how well she wrote it.
Gosh.
It's a great interview. I encourage you to listen.
What's the name of your book club again?
Bookmark, the Under the Radar Book Club.
Callie, it's great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Callie
you.
Crossley. We've been speaking with Callie Crossley. She's host of the aforementioned Under the Radar show with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here, 89.7 at 6 o'clock. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs tonight, Friday, 7:30. You can also hear her commentaries. Callie's commentaries on Monday for GBH Morning Edition. Okay, up next, former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrew Cabral will join us to talk about new developments in a 40-year-old murder case involving a possible serial killer con man, plus what you're supposed to do with that old musty mattress and clothes that you want to throw out. Andrew Cabral is next on 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio.
The respiratory illness, RSV, is overwhelming children's hospitals around the country.
We don't have the beds available to take care of the patients in the waiting room. So we see them in a waiting room. We see them wherever we can put them in a corner.
I'm Juana Summers. We'll visit a hospital in Seattle seeing an unprecedented surge of patients. This afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Ocean State Job Lot, partnering with customers to help veterans in the Northeast by donating winter coats to those in need. More at oceanstatejoblot.com. That's oceanstatejoblot.com. And Groton Hill Music Center. a music education and performance destination less than an hour from Boston, presenting the Handel and Haydn Society, A Far Cry, and more. You can find the full schedule at grottenhill.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You're going to hear some wonderful music, some important music, actually, in the next hour. So stick around. We're now joined on Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea is the former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Secretary of Public Safety here in the Commonwealth. Good afternoon, Andrea Cabral.
Good afternoon, Jim. Good afternoon, Marjorie. Hello, Andrea Cabral. Great to see you, as always. So let's start with Ketanji Brown Jackson, the newest Supreme Court Justice. Kevin Cullen had a piece in the Globe about contrasting justices like Ketanji Brown Jackson and other members of the Supreme Court recusing themselves from cases, a contrast in who recuses and who doesn't. Tell us about this.
Well, it's a very good piece by Kevin Cullen, and it really points up sort of the ivory tower that the SCOTUS, in which the SCOTUS serves. You know, every other level of court, both in the federal system and the state system, has standards for recusal when a judge is facing a conflict of interest and must recuse themselves. And I think, you know, although it's clearly time to make new rules and update old ones, for the SCOTUS, it was always sort of presumed that these are people who are so above it all that they would absolutely act on their own if there were even the slightest hint or perception of a conflict and would recuse themselves. That has not been the case with Clarence Thomas, who has pointedly, both in his rulings and his other behavior, failed to recuse himself from cases coming before the court, and they've been coming with pretty significant regularity, related to the January 6th insurrection and the attempt to overthrow the results of that election, in which his wife, Ginny Thomas, is directly involved and implicated by her own emails and communications. And he hasn't made any attempt to recuse himself. By contrast, Ketanji Brown Jackson, sitting on one of her first cases since joining the court earlier this year, it's a case about affirmative action in college and university admissions. Generally, Harvard is one of the defendants in the case. Recused herself from the Harvard portion of that case because of her ties to Harvard. Mm-hmm. And it's so clear. I mean, something clearly that she would have done no matter what the conflict. But what Cullen's column makes, crystal clear is that this is Thomas thumbing his nose, abusing his power, and the Chief Justice having either no inclination and or no ability to stop him from doing it.
You know, I'm going to channel Marjorie Egan and a point she's made relentlessly and accurately. The Chief Justice is perturbed enough to speak out against the leak in the Dobbs case that repealed Roe passionately, but does not have the decency or the courage to speak out about the fact that there's a clear conflict of interest with Clarence Thomas in terms of, as you say, cases that relate to January 6th and Trump and that sort of thing. You know, I think it is Judge Gertner, who has said to us, confirmed obviously what you say, there are no ethics rules that apply to, or recusal rules that apply to the Supreme Court. I think it's Nancy Gertner who said to us, what Roberts could do, which would not be a direct indictment, even though there should be one of Clarence Thomas's non-recusal, is pick a panel of former federal judges, for example, or former federal appellate judges to sit on an ethics panel or a conflict of interest panel and let them make decisions whether a liberal-leaning justice or a conservative justice is in a position where at least the appearance of impropriety exists. Is that not, it seems to me to be a spectacular and pretty safe idea for a cautious Chief Justice. You shaking your head?
There's a reason that Nancy Gertner was such a good judge. That is an excellent idea and suggestion. Roberts could clearly do it. And there are more than enough standards on the resolution of conflict that exist, just age-old standards that any good panel of judges could apply. But keep in mind that, Robert's silence isn't just about this thing with Thomas. It's about there's silence around Thomas not declaring income that both he and his wife have gotten from conservative groups, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Amy Coney Barrett not disclosing her conflict of interest in having been paid to speak at an event, I think one of the sponsors of whom was this anti-LGBT group, and she's sitting on cases about LGBT rights. I think that with this incarnation of the court, Thomas has always been a problem from the time that he was, in my view, wrongfully confirmed. But with adding the Trump justices, the questions about Brett Kavanaugh suddenly not having to deal with a $200,000 mortgage and a bunch of other debt being sort of seriously wiped out just before his confirmation hearing, the panel would have to start with investigating all of the things that happened up to and including their confirmations, and then going forward would probably be great at making decisions on recusal. But this is a court that does not, to say they don't inspire confidence is probably the understatement of the year, but they have more questionable things in their current dealings and their background, and it's just a disgrace. As a lawyer, it's just, it's devastating.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County. So, Andrea, adding to the legal woes of the Massachusetts State Police, the former head of the union there, Dana Pullman, has just been convicted for kickbacks, taking thousands of dollars and using them for flowers, gifts, a Miami Beach vacation, meals at upscale restaurants with a girlfriend, and adding insult to injury, at least if you're this guy's wife, is that many of the bribes were disguised as consulting fees paid to his wife. So you got to wonder what's going on over at the Massachusetts State Police. And we had people taking money for doing details they didn't do and tickets they didn't, it's been kind of a bad time for the state cops.
Well, in full disclosure, I know Dana Pullman. I dealt with him. He was the head of the union, obviously, when I was Secretary of Public Safety, and I battled with him over the settlement that's actually mentioned in the article. I sort of was fighting against that settlement. I didn't think it was appropriate, but ultimately the case was settled. Fought with him about that and had some dealings with him, so I know him a bit. And Ann Lynch too she was involved in that settlement.
The lobbyist, who's also convicted.
She was convicted too, right? Yep.
Yes. And this is, this is quite a scheme that was laid out here. And, we're not, unfamiliar with the union boss position and where it falls in. Clearly, you need to have a head of the union, but where that position falls within police departments. So it's a full-time position. You're paid a salary. I don't think Dana Pullman's been a trooper doing, police work for a very, very long time. But, Patrick Rose was the head of the union for BPD, and it's a place that it's a position that insulates you until it doesn't, right? So you can get away with a lot if that's what you're inclined to do. You can get away with a lot. Yes, you get a debit card or a credit card that's, for the union. You're overseeing, you have a treasurer and other officers, but you're basically overseeing all of that money that unions get every single month, or however often they collect dues from members, and you oversee the spending of that money so that, it can be ripe for abuse. And this is between the money that he was taking himself, just diverting dollars that he took himself, and the kickback scheme he had going with Ann Lynch. This was incredibly lucrative over a very long period of time.
Can I just add one sentence here? These two indictments, Rose and Pullman, I don't mean literally, but I mean literally and figuratively indictments, little I and capital I, are about the behavior of individuals. I don't think it's fair to indict the class of police union presidents for the criminal behavior of two, Andrea.
Jim was a union president, Andrea. That's why he feels that way.
I wasn't saying that. That's why. This is what
you're doing. Any kickbacks? You doing any kickbacks, Jim?
When I was president of the union, I wasn't indicted. Let's put it that way.
He wasn't indicted. No, I'm sorry, Andrea.
I want to be really unclear because I don't think you heard me correctly. I was not saying that this is what union presidents do. I said the nature of the position insulates you to some degree because you're doing this union work. And you're always at odds with management. And so there's a natural tension there. And that's why I said if you're inclined to do something like this, the nature of the position sometimes facilitates it, but you have to have a criminal intent, which I'm not suggesting by any chance that most union, by any stretch, that most union presidents have. But in this case, like I said, it was a fairly sophisticated scheme.
Can I just clarify one thing for longtime listeners?
Yep.
Marjorie has accused me for years and years of stealing groceries from the Wawa supermarket, of which I was an assistant manager.
I think we have it on tape, Andrea.
I was not the president of the... First of all, I didn't do it.
They sent me the video.
And secondly, even if I did do it, in the words of O.J. Simpson, I was not president of the union at that particular time. We're talking to Andrew Cabral.
We have to get to the most incredible story of the day. I mean, obviously, this woman was murdered in Provincetown in 1974, and people, the so-called Lady of the Dunes, people did not know who she was for a very long time. People now
50 years.
Yeah, through DNA, discovered that this was a woman from Tennessee, mother, wife. Her name was Ruth Marie Terry. But I want to talk about the alleged killer here, her husband, who apparently well, I shouldn't say apparently, he looks to be a serial murderer, murdering wives, murdering the daughter of a wife. Tell us about the husband that they think may have murdered her as well.
Yeah,
this could be a movie.
When you have a story like this, it's good to be a reminder to people of just how easy it used to be, if you had sufficient mobility, to do things like this. Now it's unclear to me whether or not he was an actual bigamist or just a serial marriage guy, right? But his name, he went by the name of Guy Rockwell Muldavin, although he's got a bunch of aliases that are both incarnations of those three names, variations on those three names. And he also went by the name of Michael or Mark Strong. I think that may have been one of the names that he used when he was in Massachusetts. But he married something like 8 women over a period of years.
Not a good sign.
Not a good sign. One of them was apparently this Ruth Marie Terry. But by the time that he married her, he was already a suspect in a double murder of a woman that he had also married.
Yep.
And her daughter on the West Coast. Yeah. And part of the reason that he was suspected of that is because in the home in which they were living in this sort of dilapidated house. He had an antique store, I think, at the ground level of the house. A woman's remains were found in a septic tank in that house.
Oh.
Listen to you.
Right, and it was a dental plate, and human remains were found there, and so he always suspected. Since both the wife and the daughter had disappeared into thin air and had never been found, and a woman's remains that could not be identified were found in the septic tank, he was always suspected of that. But it doesn't seem to have slowed him down at all. It seems as though he lived over time. He had connections in a number of different states. He married women sequentially. In fact, when he was married to the woman who disappeared, in Seattle, another woman walked into his antique store, and within a few months, he had divorced the woman he was living with, which is also a motive for murder.
Yeah.
And had married this new one. And the story isn't, I think there'll probably be a lot more stories to come. That it's not clear what happened to all of his wives, whether or not any others
survived,
mysteriously, or are still alive. But part of the reason that it was so difficult to find Ruth Marie Terry's identity is because the person who killed her cut her hands off. Yeah. And back then, fingerprints were the primary way that people were identified. Now, fast forward, 50 years, we use, genealogical DNA, and we literally can trace people by relatives and ancestry.
Pretty amazing.
Where we couldn't do. It is amazing.
But I want to mention this guy's resume though. This is absolutely unbelievable. They nail him for grand larceny, and he's on trial, and he got a 15-year suspended sentence. But at the trial, he testifies that he'd enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. He served as a military officer during World War II. He'd been a part owner of a Havana hotel. He called himself at one point Michael Strong. He bought a sports car, drove from Reno, Nevada to Provincetown, where he claimed to be a writer for a Vancouver newspaper and magazine. Then he goes to New York to have a nose straightening operation and gets an apartment under another alias. And then
alias, whatever it is.
And then he goes on to dye his hair red. He says he didn't kill anybody. And he ends his life, never gets nailed for any of these murders, he gained a cult following, Jim. Think about this for the future. As a host of a weekly radio program called Talk to Me, where his topics centered on, as he called it, the erosion of culture and the belief that killing had become a habit.
Wow. He knows about it.
Well, he's right. He was definitely talking about stuff that he had
something about.
Knowledge of.
Talk about what you know.
Hiding in plain sight works.
Yeah.
It just does.
I was a kid hanging out in Provincetown when this happened. That's right. And for this to be solved 48 years later is just Did we mention the guy? Oh, you did say the guy's dead. So regardless, we're not. It's a fascinating story. Yep. It's a great story. Lady of the Dunes.
Well, it says something about the kind of people that become talk show hosts. That's what I would say.
It's
not good. It's not good.
It is not.
Did they vet him at all? My God, which name was he under when he's on the radio show with his cult following? Also shows how people can be fooled very easily, does it not?
Yes, it does, Margie. Yes. That's a very fine point.
Okay, we don't have that much time left, Andrea, but
very little time.
We want to know about what we do now with our old clothes and our mattresses.
What are you asking her for? What the hell does she know about it?
This is her.
I know, but what does she know about how to get rid of a mattress in your clothes?
Because I assume she read the story and she's going to tell us.
Okay, you have a minute to tell us how I get rid of my mattress.
Apparently, it's your problem. So, long overdue. Everybody knows Alston Christmas, but there's a lot of that. There has been historically a lot of that mattress throwing out. And the city would come and take it, but it ends up in landfills. It's not just that; it's various types of clothing and other things. And so now, what people are really being strongly encouraged, because there are places that will recycle old textiles. There are places that will take, your mattress and you can recycle those. Commercial scale food waste for the restaurants, that now has to be recycled. And it really is long overdue, because I've wondered for, decades where all of this stuff ultimately ends up. And we're going to, at some point, become more landfill than land. So it's a good thing that they're telling people to just, recycle it. Figure out, you bought it. Figure out how you can put it back into circulation or do something that's less harmful to the environment.
Yeah. So if we can sum up our time with Andrea, she said at the end there, people are being urged not to just toss their mattress, and they're also being urged not to marry a radio talk show host who specializes in killing on the air.
That's right.
Is that what you're basically saying today?
I would think that would be, those two things are sound advice.
That would sum it up.
One poor wife after another. Oh my gosh.
By the way, I hadn't even thought of what Andrea said. We don't even know what happened to the other 5 or 6.
We don't.
To be continued.
It's a mystery.
Yeah.
Andrea, good to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time. Andrea Cabral.
I don't think he was paying a lot of alimony or child support. I think that
guess he didn't have to, did he?
Happening, was it? Andrea Cabral, thank you very much. We've been talking to the former Suffolk County Sheriff and Secretary of Public Safety for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Andrea Cabral. After a quick break, what soup cans thrown at a Vermeer painting can mean for the art world and the world. We'll talk with GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen on this latest string of eco-protesters and everything else going on in the world of arts and culture. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
As the governor's race wraps up, polls show Republican Jeff Deal trailing badly, but he's sticking with what the Globe's Emma Platoff calls a head-scratching and haphazard campaign strategy.
I'm Adam Riley. Tonight on Talking Politics, we'll dig into that with her and UMass political scientist Tatish Nateta. Plus, in the Boston City Council, identity politics take an ugly turn. Tune in for those conversations tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB. And City Year. Dedicated to helping students reach their full potential, City Year places AmeriCorps mentors in public school classrooms to support students academically and socially. You can learn more at cityyear.org.
Trusted. Local. News. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by a guy who I believe just finished the last bite of a spicy Jared. We will find out. He would be, speaking of, GBH Executive Arts Editor, Jared Bowen. Hi, Jared.
Hi. They only have the spicy Jared when I'm filling in.
That's very sad.
It's only an interim sandwich.
That is really sad. So
Part-time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Jared, there's been a lot of writing about these so-called eco-protesters that are doing things in art museums to bring attention to climate change. So we're going to start with a little sound here from one of them, Phoebe Plummer. She was one of the two activists who threw a can of tomato soup at a Van Gogh painting a couple of weeks ago. First, you'll hear sound of her moments after super gluing her hand to a wall, then an interview on NPR.
What is worth more? Art or life?
Oscar Wilde,
Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice?
My brother wants to have a kid in the next year. I'm doing this so that one day I can look my niece or nephew in the eye and say that I fought for your future.
We should just read the first line when she's gluing herself to something or other. What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice, she said.
Yeah, we should point out this painting was covered, so it wasn't really damaged. But what do you make of all this? This is going on with Vermeers and Van Goghs.
Against big oil.
Yes, against big oil. And it was called Stop Big Oil, the group that's doing this. What do you think?
I think it's infuriating. I have to be honest. I understand why they're doing this. Yes, they're trying to call attention to what we're doing to the planet, but I don't understand the mechanism for this campaign, which is we're talking about the planet. We want to take care of something that we treasure and that is precious and that is beautiful. So why are we going to go after something else that is precious and beautiful and something that we treasure? And people will say they're doing it because for exactly what's happening right now. We're talking about it on the radio. But I would argue that anybody who really loves art and is going to museums is going to appreciate the planet, and it's probably your same constituency. I get tongue-tied. I'm so outraged by this whole thing. Because also, they're making the argument that, okay, we're only gluing ourselves to or throwing food on paintings that have glass over them. That doesn't mean they can't be damaged. In fact, they have damaged the frame that surrounds the girl with the pearl earring, the Vermeer at Mauritshuis Museum in the Netherlands. It doesn't mean that what they're throwing at these paintings can't seep beneath the glass and damage the paintings, but also it changes the nature of museums. So now they're looking at possibly having to have more insurance, something they can't necessarily afford. We see what's happened during the pandemic and how expenses have escalated, and they've already had to reduce staffing. It means that they may cordon off really treasured pieces of work so that they make them even more to remove and far more inaccessible. There are any number of problems with the logic behind this.
Well, let me say a couple things. I'm glad you're worked into a bit of a frenzy here. I have to say, I care a lot about a lot of things. I'm not super gluing my head to anything. That's number one.
Yeah, by the way, what kind of look is that?
Exactly. But let me tell you something else here. You may not even know this. I had a guy on TV with me last week about this, who is the head of a program at NYU, something like Arts and Activism. It's a whole department at NYU about how artists can be more activists in the world. He was appalled by this as you are, but for a slightly different well, maybe not different reason. I said, well, let me give you an example of people that everybody was appalled at. Do you feel the same about them? And I mentioned PETA. And I said, they used to throw red paint on people's furs to encourage the stopping of making fur coats and that sort of thing. And he made the most important point, I think, is even though I wasn't crazy about this, I'm paraphrasing this guy, he said at least everybody understood the connection between the action and the goal, whether you support it or not. Here, everybody knows they threw soup or something else or glued their head or there's something to the wall. Nobody remembers what the hell they were there for. So beyond being destructive or potentially destructive, it was totally not helpful, because the cause that they were there for is understood by nobody.
Well, the point has been made that for AIDS activists, and when they were trying to draw attention to the fact that the government wasn't supporting this and recognizing this crisis, that they were creating die-ins. Yes, there's a logic. It made sense why they were creating die-ins. The same with PETA, the same with the civil rights activists. They were breaking laws to make a point for the access and the liberties they didn't have. You could follow the extension. This makes zero sense to me.
I don't want to minimize this.
Can we? On the other hand, though, they do have an argument where they talk about what they've done. Just Stop Oil, I guess, began their big activities in April. They climbed up on oil tankers to stop them from moving. They formed blocks in front of oil depots so none of the tankers could come and leave. What's it
got to do with what they did in the museums?
Well, the point is, I didn't hear about that. I didn't hear that they had dug tunnels under these oil terminals and gone to gas stations and smashed up pumps. I didn't hear about any of that.
So they don't get any attention when they do that.
I heard about this. So that is a point.
But I would argue that, first of all, it could be negative attention now at this point. It's like when people chain themselves in a human chain across the highway and they disrupt everyone's commute. People aren't very sympathetic to the cause after that, and that may be happening here. I hope not.
I was sympathetic unless I was driving on that highway at that particular time, actually.
Exactly. But as I also said at the beginning, now it's getting attention, but again, the people who care most are probably already the people who are paying attention to museums and the arts, and I do believe it's the same.
Before we leave this,
I'm going to make one more point.
Please.
The other point that I think is a legitimate point is that these paintings are going to be more closely protected now.
So harder to even get access.
But people aren't protected from climate change. Animals aren't protected from climate change. The lakes, the streams, the oceans, the planet isn't protected. So that's the point too.
But why do you have to take something away in order to do this? This is why I can't make sense
of
this.
To get attention.
Because we know about it.
Yeah, but again, the point is, I am totally, as you know, I am much more radical on we know about it philosophy than you are. Like demonstrations at people's homes, you don't support,
That's
I do.
Right. Terrorizing the children.
Okay, but that's not how I would put it. However, the point that whoever that guy was I spoke to from NYU and Jared, is they don't make the connection. If you make the connection, then maybe you can justify the behavior that you find objectionable. But I have another question, and I don't know if either of you know it. If you super glue your head to the wall, I'm serious about this. What happened? How do you get off the wall? Do you lose a layer of skin or 5 layers of skin? No one has written about this.
Yeah, paging Hannibal Lecter.
I'm serious.
Yeah, it doesn't end well.
She said in a story, one of these stories, not the super gluing to the wall, that the police apparently are accustomed to people gluing themselves to different and that they have some super solvent that they come in with to remove them from the
By the way,
wall.
we should say, in all fairness, we are contemplating gluing ourselves to the studio when they try to fire us. We have discussed that. But that is there it would be clear what the connection between the action and the cause would be.
And I just want to make one other point. Van Gogh talked about nature. This is why he was out in nature painting. Turner, J.M.W. Turner painted and was looking at the levels of pollution outside of London and what was happening in England as industry came. So again, you're going after artists who have been having these conversations in addition to their art.
Yeah, they're on your side. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but I was making their points, what they said, that justifying why they're doing this.
A texter said if they wanted 15 minutes of fame, they should have thrown the soup on a Warhol. Think about that for a bit. That's actually quite clever. If you can't figure it out, Google it.
That is very clever.
We're talking to Jared Bowen.
So I think we've got some sound from this too, but you want to give us an introduction. Tell us about this movie, Armageddon.
Sounds Armageddon Time, right?
It's called Armageddon Time, which is actually, as revealed in the film, it's a line from President Reagan who said his may be the generation to see Armageddon Time. And so this is a film that takes us to the 1980s, and we meet this young boy. His name is Paul. He's a 6th grader. He cares more about making art, actually, than he does about paying attention in the classroom. And so it starts as a coming-of-age story directed by James Gray. And what it became for me, actually, is an understanding this coming-of-age fable really is a look at how bigotry is fomented, because you have this boy who is growing up in New York. His only friend is black, and he goes home to a family who has no qualms about censoring themselves with their racist language. He's eventually sent to a different school to improve his education, and he's surrounded by at least one child who uses the N-word with the same nonchalance with which he may pick up a tennis racket. This is a school where also we see a couple of Trump family figures have cameos as they try to stir up the student body into what they consider the ideals of being an American are. And the one moment of caution in this film comes from Anthony, and I should say that the parents are played very well by Anne Hathaway and Jeremy Strong, and then Anthony Hopkins plays his grandfather.
Yeah.
We come to learn this is a Jewish family, and Anthony Hopkins, as the grandfather, cautions him, you have to find kindness in the world, you have to be kind. Look what happened to our family and our ancestry, of course, with the Holocaust. After I saw the film, I read a lot more about it, and that it is really autobiographical. It's James Gray's story, actually, again, the director and writer. So he is telling the story about his childhood.
Okay, here's the sound from the movie Armageddon Time. It is the first day of school. Anne Hathaway and Jeremy Strong's characters are watching their little boy head off in his full suit and attaché case.
I look like a total idiot.
No, you don't.
I can't even have a normal knapsack.
A normal knapsack? Why would you want a normal knapsack when you can have this?
This is an attaché case. This is Class A1. This says, I am ready to work. I come as a student.
You just want me to be like you.
What?
You just want me to be like you.
No. No, big boy. I want you to be a whole lot better than me.
Oof. Hey, Jeremy Strong is Succession, right?
Yes, yeah.
You know, when I see Succession, which I love, I feel about him sort of like I feel about Tony Soprano, is that you can never, ever leave that role. And while I saw him in some other things, he was always Tony Soprano. I almost sort of feel the same about one of the greatest actors of our time, Walter White, and what's the name?
Bryan Cranston, yeah.
Bryan Cranston, who's brilliant, but he is Walter White to me.
He was also a good LBJ, though.
Oh,
he
he's
transferred
brilliant.
himself beautifully
in that play.
into that, and I didn't think of him as Walter White
No,
at all.
he was. I agree. Don't you sort of feel that Jeremy Strong is the character in Succession?
It is kind of a shame of that when you're so good. Excuse me, when you're so good in a role that it's hard to let that other character go. And I think part of the reason you're so good is because of an intensity that you bring to it. Yeah. And he kind of carries that same intensity. By the way, he's a Marblehead native, I believe.
He is?
He's one of us, Jeremy Strong.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I will, the same thing. When I first started watching, I had to suspend belief for a moment to recognize that we weren't watching Succession anymore, which I also
dying to see
love.
the film, actually, even though there was that New Yorker, it was the New Yorker piece that was trashing him about how he treats people, which, about Jeremy Strong a couple of months ago.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so in any case, talking to Jared
But
Bowen.
it's good. It's a good movie. We should see it.
I really liked it for this through line that I talked about.
Okay, because I know you said Tar is the best thing you've seen this year. Is it still the best thing you've seen this year?
Tar still is, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Andres Nelson's. Were you shocked that the music
did he
director?
watch it?
We asked him yesterday or the day before.
We thought
he said he
might
hadn't
have.
seen it yet. He said he wants to. But by the way, I was
He's
at the BSO last
exact
night.
opposite.
Can I tell you, you don't even have to be a classical music fan. When you go into Symphony Hall, and they did this Strauss thing in the end, Alpine something or other. Spring. There had to be 100 players on the stage. It is spectacular. I mean, I really urge you to give it a try at least once, and I think you'll be addicted. So the Greenway, we've talked about a lot of wonderful things done on the Greenway in the last maybe decade after virtually nothing being done before. What's this Wendy Yu thing?
So she is an Australian artist, and
young, right? Really
she's very young.
Yeah.
As she's done around the world, she elevates dancers, literally elevates them. And so what she's done in this piece called "As We Rise," which is on view now at the Rose Kennedy Greenway, the Conservancy there commissioned her to create a piece, and so she came to town and she worked with a local dance organization called The Flavor Continues, and she spent a lot of time with them and worked with them, and then what she took away from their dance and their choreography, she then collaborated with the projection artists Illuminus to make these giant projections on the side of the Federal Reserve Building, which, if you think about it, because it is just a plain facade and it's very tall down at the waterfront, it's a perfect screen. And so you can go down there. Actually, the first night I went, it was super foggy, which made it even more ethereal. But on a clear night, what you'll see are these dancers doing their dance, their choreography. And then she the way that she manipulates it, coming in with her perspective, is she turns it into this beautiful, artistic, painterly swirl that kind of works its way down the side of the building. So and it's all about working with local organizations and these local street dancers and giving them a bigger platform and truly elevating them.
I love it.
And so it's about 20 minutes long, and it's just gorgeous. It starts every night at dusk, and it's on view through November 29th.
You know, the first while you were talking, I was thinking about the first projection thing I saw, I think, on the Greenway a couple of years ago, was pictures of immigrants, one of whom was David Leonard, the president of the library from Ireland. Was that the first of this round? Projections on big buildings, to me, are so exciting. It's unbelievable. Was that one of the first?
It is one of the first, yeah. And it's so great because this is the beauty of public art, that you can just be traveling in your car or biking or walking down, and suddenly something catches your eye and it's out there for everybody to see, and it's free.
How long is it there?
Through the end of November.
Fabulous. That's great.
So tell us about Frank Bowling.
Yeah, this is beautiful too. Marjorie, I can't believe that you were defending the climate people.
Well,
I don't think you weren't really.
I'm not defending them, really. I'm just saying that you hear this a lot from people who do things that are really obnoxious, protesting, and they will say to you, well, we did X, Y, and Z, and you ignored us.
I don't know. I had to go back to that, but
No, it's fine.
And so that's why. I mean, I'm not keen on throwing things and gluing yourself to Van Goghs.
Okay.
But I do think they're not without a point.
Right, and I promise I won't go buy a Hummer out of outrage for them. So to talk about Frank Bowling, this is a really beautiful show. First of all, I feel like looking at this work, which is so colorful and vibrant, that it's got this electricity to it, that it almost hums when you walk through these galleries. So Frank Bowling grew up in British Guiana and moved to London, and this was in the 1960s, where he recognized that he had to leave London, even though he had a great education. And he was a classmate of David Hockney, so he was among the greats, but he had to come to New York because this is where the center of the art world was at that time, looking at abstraction and then moving into pop art. He wanted to be in the center of it all. So he moves to New York and lives here between 1966 and 1975. It really pushes him forward in the way he's painting, but also who he is as an artist. So this new show at the Museum of Fine Arts called Frank Bowling's Americas, first of all, it's the first major look at his career in about 40 years, but it's also the only show to ever look at the work that he created here in America. And he has several motifs that he's working through. One, you see these abstract paintings, and they're very colorful, but he has just this light, faint sketch of continents from the southern hemisphere, or looking back at Guyana, the kind of surface. Then he continues to move forward and he almost creates this geology, this landscape in his painting, because it builds up, and then you see, like as we were just talking about with Wendy these rivers of paint running down, but it's all about how he constructed the tilting of the canvas in his studio so that he could manifest these landscapes in the paintings. It's just really exciting, but a little bit more to know about him is that he, as a black man coming here in the 1960s and 70s, he really took action, because this was a time in which museums started to show more black artists, but lumping them all together. And he was saying, no, this is not an art show by just putting us all together. We all have different voices. We have different things to say. So he organized his own show with others. He wrote, he taught at Mass Art. I mean, he was just a force, and still is, because he's still painting, living back in London.
By the way, Marjorie said it's going to be there till April 9th, by the way. And a BUR story in this has this photograph of this incredibly beautiful painting, Mother House in Night Storm.
Yeah, I love
And what
this.
Marjorie told me before...
Should I hold it up?
No, well, you can do whatever you want. But it's totally beautiful. Beyond
There it
that,
is.
Marjorie said as a compromise, she will not be gluing herself to that. She will actually be gluing herself to Frank Bowling himself, which is really... Now, before you leave, Jared, can I raise one other thing with you? A lot of people ask me, what is something that you and I don't know, have in common? What would you say?
We complain a lot?
No, we do complain a lot, but it's not that. It is obviously our love of horseback riding.
That is
which
true.
Obviously,
He is moving like a tremendous machine.
No, so that made me think
That was
of Secretariat.
Belmont Stakes.
Yeah, do you have anything to say about that, Jared Bowen?
I do. I'm so sorry to tell you, Marjorie, but Flightline. I mean, who is Secretariat? Do we even know Secretariat anymore? Because now Flightline has come on the scene.
Here he is.
And take a good look at this, because you're not going to see this too often, maybe never again. Flightline, 20 lengths clear. Flavien Prat takes a hold and canters in the TVG Pacific Classic.
Now, we didn't know how to break this to Marjorie. She never heard of Flightline.
But it's okay. You know why?
Why?
That was only 20 lengths.
Yeah, but let me tell you, excuse me.
No, we're not even done.
We're not done?
Me.
Oh, no.
As far as this is the New York Times, we didn't want to show it to Marjorie because we knew it would ruin her weekend. As far as great horse racing debates go, this one is civil and wholly welcome. Is Flightline the sport's all-time great? Better than Secretariat, Man of War, and a couple other. And this horse has only raced in 5 races. It's racing in the Breeders' Cup this weekend. It's 4 years old, so it can't do it. But people think if it wins this Breeders' Cup race against the best 3-year-olds, it may be deemed, Marjorie, take it, in a good stride, the greatest horse ever.
Hold on. You just said the horse is 4 years old.
4 years old.
What was it doing when it was 3 years old?
How the hell winning races?
This is why it is an extraordinary story and a movie that is going to blow Secretariat away. So it has had a cracked hoof, it has had a huge gash, it had a bruised bone, and yet it's come back. 5 undefeated races. It's beyond that.
You're in denial, Marjorie.
Beyond that,
Let's face
it is just, it's winning by 10 lengths in some cases.
This is the most 20, excuse me, 20 lengths.
Wasn't it 35 in the Belmont
40,
Stakes?
but who's counting? Can we hear Flightline again one more time, please? Here's Flightline at the Del Mar in Southern California. Here it is.
And take a good look at this, because you're not going to see this too often, maybe never again.
Never.
Flightline, 20 lengths clear. Flavien Prat takes a hold and canters in the TVG Pacific Classic.
Marjorie is in such denial. As we're playing that, she is Googling on her phone to see if she can make her case.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I love great racers.
Stuttering over this.
I'll look up at Flightline, but I would say it's unfair for a 3-year-old to be compared to a 4-year-old in racing history. That's what I would say.
Can I read from the New York Times story, the last paragraph?
Yeah.
So you losers who continue to believe Secretariat, this is the New York Times.
That's not
greatest.
the New York Times.
She's not paying attention.
31 lengths.
What?
It still got him by 11 lengths. 31
different
lengths.
race.
5:40 tomorrow.
You are really sad.
Okay, 5:40
Is it 5:40
tomorrow?
5:40 tomorrow.
Breeders' Cup.
But this horse can't be in the Kentucky Derby or anything else.
No.
It's too old.
No, because
it had a cracked hoof and something.
Yeah.
So when Diane Lane stars in this one, and she leaves Secretariat completely behind, I'm so
you're
sorry.
being very small and narrow-minded, Marjorie.
This is as much of a blow to me
I know
as
that.
the Van Goghs were to you. So I would say it's touche today. I disappointed you, and you've disappointed me. I crushed you, and you crushed me. How's that?
Should we hug it out?
We should hug it out.
What are you
We really
gluing
should.
yourself to on Friday night?
Oh God, now I'm all Igor
blunged.
Yeah. Igor Goliak, who is a director here, of Ukrainian descent. He recently went back. We'll talk about what he sees as a passion and role of arts in this conflict, and he has a very nuanced view. Art can't save everything, he talks about. But also he's directing this new show that opens tonight with Mikhail Baryshnikov, an adaptation of The Cherry Orchard. So we sit down with him, and as always, we do our roundtable of all the things to see on arts this week.
Well, we'll be watching there, Jared Bowen.
Okay.
Flightline, Marjorie.
I'm going to have to try to recover.
Look at how
I'm very upset.
she is totally discombobulated over a damn horse.
Yeah, I am. It'd be awful.
I know.
Secretariat was displaced.
I feel really bad now.
I have my Secretariat mug.
We know you do.
You guys gave me that. My Secretariat coasters.
You don't. While
Paul
you've been
from
here,
Worcester made the coaster,
He
right?
did. He did.
While you were here today, we replaced everything at home.
That was Flightline.
with Flightline stuff. Sorry.
Okay.
I've never even heard of this
The
horse.
team is just wrapping up now.
Okay. Goodbye, Jared. Nice to see you. Jared Bowen.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with GBH's Arts Editor, Jared Bowen, who broke my heart. After a quick break, it's time for another live Music Friday performance here at the Boston Public Library. Today, we are diving into the world of protest music. We are so excited about this. This is a woman who's gotten props from the likes of Neil Young. Singer-songwriter Pamela Means will join us in just a moment. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming live on youtube.com/GBH News.
respiratory illness RSV is overwhelming children's hospitals around the country.
We don't have the beds available to take care of the patients in the waiting room. So we see them in a waiting room. We see them wherever we can put them in a corner.
I'm Juana Summers. We'll visit a hospital in Seattle seeing an unprecedented surge of patients. This afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And Ocean State Job Lot, partnering with customers to help veterans in the Northeast by donating winter coats to those in need. More at oceanstatejoblot.com. That's oceanstatejoblot.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. There's a story about the late, great Sam Cooke, whose seminal Change Is Gonna Come was written when he first had heard Bob Dylan singing Blowin' in the Wind. And he said he was frustrated that a 22-year-old white kid from Minnesota could write about the political moment so powerfully. Protest music has a rich tradition, you all know, here in the U.S., and few people understand it better than our next guest, singer-songwriter Pamela Means. That's right, it's time for another live Music Friday performance. Pamela's been touring with a series of talks on music called The Power of the Protest Song, Our Shared History and Present Day. She was at the Great Club Passim at the end of last month. Tomorrow night she'll be playing in Northampton, Worcester on December 3rd, and you can find more details about all of her upcoming shows at Pamela Means, MEANS.com. Pamela, it's great to meet you.
You too, Jim.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Marjorie.
so much for coming
Hi,
in.
everyone.
We much appreciate it. So tell people, you're on this tour performing songs from the show, The Power of the Protest Song, Our Shared History and Present Day, as Jim just explained. Tell people what that means.
Well, I've long been a political songwriter, and last year I applied for some Mass Cultural Council grants.
Oh, good for you.
And that's what this show is. I thought of packaging a show, that's a weird word for this context, but I thought of Pamela Presents The Power of the Protest Song, where I could still do my own original music that connects to it, and incentive to learn other and relearn other protest songs that have inspired me or been otherwise important in our history.
What are some that have really inspired you? I know that's a really hard question considering the volume, but what are a couple? I mentioned Sam Cooke and Blowin' in the Wind. What are a couple of things that really moved you, Pamela?
Well, interesting to that, Sam Cooke, Woody Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land as a sarcastic response to God Bless America. And I don't think everybody remembers that, and the last verses are much more political than the first ones. And so Woody Guthrie, Tracy Chapman, Phil Oakes, Marvin Gaye. Strange Fruit is probably the most important protest song that
which you're going to play before you leave today.
Yes, yeah.
You know, the protest songs, when I was reading the title of your thing, and this may have been the motivation in part, and I'm glad the Mass Cultural Council did what they did, particularly after the pandemic, which I'm sure was unkind to you, like most other performers. This is not really the time of the protest song, is it? I'm trying to think. Neil Young continues to write and perform, speaking of somebody who praised your work, protest music, and there are others, obviously. You mentioned Tracy Chapman, obviously, but it's not huge, is it, or is it?
Well, I think it's always a time for the protest song until we live in peace and harmony.
No, I didn't mind the time. I mean, but people aren't writing them in this kinds of volume that they were, right?
That's correct. I think I think we could all fit on the same train car. It's a small population, but that said, more people have dipped into it and become more political. Just I think because the times have become so extreme, not unlike gluing your hand to a painting. Drastic measures.
How do you feel about that, by the way? No, by the way, it wasn't to a painting, it was to a wall next to the painting. The soup was thrown onto the plexiglass around the painting. How do you feel about that as a protest measure?
I feel drastic times call for drastic measures, and we're talking about it. We weren't talking about it the week before, so I understand.
So the first song you're going to play for us is a song I understand that you wrote on the day of the Uvalde shooting in Texas.
Yes. Sometimes I say my songs begin in fetal position.
Yeah.
There have been so many of those days in our country, and sitting with all the feelings of despair and sorrow and rage. And one of my tools is this guitar, and so I pick it up in those times. And
you know, one of the things beyond the slaughter that day, which was so horrible that we've learned as the weeks have gone on, is that children were calling from the room where the shooter was still alive and people were dying, and the cops didn't
more
do
than
it.
300 cops
376,
hanging out outside,
Yeah,
just chilling.
I mean, that wasn't known the day you wrote your song, but I assume you knew that as you continued writing it?
It wasn't, I didn't know about all of that. I mean, I think we did know the day of how many police just stood outside doing nothing. Yeah, I've sat with that feeling for quite a long time.
Can you tell, what's the name of the song you're going to perform first?
It's called Sing for Love. And it's sort of feeling a moment of throwing your hands up, like how long will this continue? What else can we do? Why isn't anything changing more quickly? And sometimes I feel my job is to sing for love.
Well, why don't you go sing for love? You want to take your headset off? Sure. We'll talk for a second while you're making your way to the microphones. By the way, I want to mention just what Marjorie did. Those, if you haven't heard those recordings from, it's now 2 young kids who called incredibly courageously from classrooms asking for help, which was not to come. It is as painful and important as virtually anything I can think of. But for right now, inspired by what happened in Uvalde, Pamela Means singing Sing for Love.
Another white boy with his hands on the trigger, along with legislators who let the loopholes linger. Law of the land loves white supremacy, so none of us are safe, no one is free. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity, but as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Martin Luther King worked to make the world a better place. He said, only love can drive out the hate. Only light can drive out the dark. So hatred shot him down in a Memphis parking lot. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity, but as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. Nothing more important than stopping fascism, 'cause fascism will stop us all. The immortal words of Fred Hampton. Black Panther Party sounding the call. Power to the people, free breakfast for the children. At 21, a freedom fighter, so Chicago police killed him. I don't think I'll live long enough to see this angry country discover unity, but as long as I got breath in my lungs, I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love. I will fight for justice, I will sing for love.
Pamela Means, Sing for Love.
You know, one of the things, you're going to play in a couple of minutes Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit for us, and there's a story behind that I think a lot of us don't know about. The courage it took her to sing it as a young woman. She was singing at 23 years old, and the blowback. So to give us a little background on the story Strange Fruit.
Yep, and there's a Massachusetts connection to that song as well. Strange Fruit was begun as a poem written by Abel Meeropol, a Jewish school teacher, and he wrote it under the pen name Lewis Allen, the first names of his two children. His two children that he and his wife lost. They died in childhood. And the Meeropols were friends with Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And when they were executed in 1953, the Meeropols adopted the two orphan sons, and they grew up with the Meeropol name, Michael and Robert, and they grew up and founded the Rosenberg Fund for Children, which is headquartered in East Hampton, Massachusetts. It's an organization that advocates for politically persecuted activists and their families. It was written in 1939. Billie Holiday did start singing it at age 23. She would perform it last at every concert. She would have the waitstaff stop all service and have one spotlight on her face, so in stark silence, she would perform the song and leave the stage and not return for any encore. And I figured that was to leave the audience with the feelings the song brings up, and I think that's true, but I think it's also a devastating song to sing repeatedly, and I don't think that she could return to the stage. And I think the anxiety of that and being harassed, she was personally told by Harry Anslinger of the FBI to stop singing Strange Fruit. She refused. He harassed her, including handcuffing her to her hospital bed at one point.
He was head of the FBI at that point, was he not? Yeah.
Yes. Can you imagine the head of the FBI coming to tell you to...
Yeah, I can, actually. I mean, I can't imagine happening to me. I can imagine the head of the FBI doing that. Yeah, I actually can.
So I think all of that anxiety contributed to her death at age 44. But I thought she was the only one who sang that song, and in my research I learned that dozens of performers have performed that song over the years. Time magazine called it the song of the 20th century. In the 40s and 50s in New York, a performer had to have a cabaret license to perform where alcohol was served. And Billie and many other performers lost their cabaret licenses and their livelihoods because they refused to stop singing that song. And when I learned about all of that courage, I found my own courage to learn the song and sing it, and because it still bears relevancy some 83 years later.
I should say so. Strange Fruit, Pamela Means. Thank you.
Thank you. The southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Blackbuddy swinging, the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. A pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolias, sweet and fresh, the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, the rain to gather, the wind to suck, sun to rot, tree to dry. Here is a strange and bitter cry.
Boy, that was spectacular. That was really... Pamela Means.
Pamela Means, thank you so much
Great
for
to
being
meet you,
with her.
Pamela. Thanks
She's
for being
come
here.
to us straight from Club Passim. She was just there at the end of the month.
Wow.
You can get more information about her shows, Pamela Means, MEANS.com. That's PamelaMeans.com. She'll be playing in Northampton, Worcester on December 3rd. And again, more details about all her upcoming shows, PamelaMeans.com. Thank you very, very much,
Thanks so much,
for
Pamela.
being with us today.
Thank you.
Okay. After a quick break, this weekend we are falling back, changing our clocks to standard time,
Listen to you.
away from daylight saving, despite the efforts of leaders like Senator Ed Markey, Senator Marco Rubio, and our own Jim Braude, who's about to go on and on.
Midterms 2022, and the end is in sight. We'll look at the closing arguments being made to one of the biggest voting blocs out there, Black women.
Get all the women you know to vote early through November 5th or on November 8th.
What's being said, and who's delivering the message? That's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Kimpton Hotels, with more than 75 boutique hotels globally, including the Kimpton 90 and Kimpton Marlowe in Boston. Hotel amenities include live music and nightly social hours. More at kimptonhotels.com/radio. And the Museum of Russian Icons, presenting Artists for Ukraine, transforming ammo boxes into icons. 3 icons painted on the boards of ammunition boxes from combat zones in Ukraine. More at museumofrussianicons.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude, Marge Regan, live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Before we continue, Marjorie got some very, very good news during the break. Would you like to share with people?
I did. Apparently a texter, it's right on the screen. I was being made fun of about my obsession with Secretariat by
Yes, you were.
Jared Bowen, who was talking about this new horse that's supposed to be better than Secretariat, Flightline.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a texter, and thank you very much, texted in to say Secretariat's daughter gave birth to AP Indy, which is Flightline's grandfather horse, which means that Flightline is a descendant of Secretariat. So there you go, Jim.
That's a very thin read, Marjorie.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
I can't believe people are applauding for
super
this.
sperm.
They're
in
as
that
sad as
Secretariat.
you are, I should
I think
say.
Secretariat had many horses.
Well, that was why he was such a big deal.
That's right. He was a stud.
He was a real stud.
Real stud.
In any case, congratulations. Our number is 877-301-8970. The time of year is upon us. We turn back our clocks an hour and sink into the dark blanket of winter. If you've listened to the show more than once before, you know that doesn't have to be this way. Earlier this year, we actually got closer than we've ever been before to enacting legislation in Washington that would do away with the fallback garbage once and for all. The Senate passed it unanimously, by the way, obviously bipartisan, led by Rubio and Markey. Talk about a twosome. And it's languishing in the House. We do this topic twice a year. Maybe this is the last time if Congress does the right thing. The question is, rather than going back and forth twice a year, spring ahead, fall back, shouldn't we make daylight saving, there's no S on the end of it, daylight saving time year-round in America, as the Senate unanimously believes? Our number is 877-301-8970. And before Marjorie speaks, I would like to say this. I would have to say, one of the primary advocates
that's right.
for this. I've written in the Globe about it, etc. Marjorie opposes it for one reason, and one reason only, which is because it matters to me. Is that a fairly...
You're
can you make eye contact and tell me, is that not the reason?
I'm getting it.
Exactly.
That's the whole bottom line. Yep, okay.
Now, the only argument... Let me say, if I can set this up briefly. There is one thing that people on both sides, standard time, which is what we go to Sunday, and daylight saving time, the one thing both sides agree, and this is a serious comment, is the changing at all is bad for people's health. The changing of the clock, it messes with your, whatever those rhythm things are called.
Circadian.
Bad for your health, causes more auto accidents, no matter what the switch is. That's not in debate. There's no question that people on both sides think we should have a permanent time situation. Should it be standard time, which basically means there's a little more light in the morning for your little kidlets on their way to school.
That's right.
Or
Jim wants the little kidlets to wear miners' hats.
I do, with little lights in the front.
Little lights,
That's
they
exactly
can see their way in the
Paid
dark.
for by the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Or should we have more light at night, which is what daylight saving time would give us? I would like to pose this to you, Marjorie, at 877-301-8970. I looked this up. On Monday, when we leave work, that means assuming you come to work on Monday, as opposed to working from home. If you come to work... If you leave
work...
That
was a snide remark.
Well, I'm really
there,
angry.
Wasn't it?
What can I say? If you leave work at 4:31, what will it be like outside?
It'll be dark, Jim.
4:31.
It'll be dark.
Is
That's
that okay
true.
with you?
Well, no. I wish it were dark later in the day. But, you know, I have a great piece here by Catherine Wu from The Atlantic, who's talking about how...
She doesn't know what she's talking
Well,
about.
we're going to have a 25-hour day. You know,
it's one day.
One day.
One day. We get an extra hour on
day.
Sunday.
And she's kind of excited about that. And I can see where her excitement comes from. Yeah, I can sort of get that. Remember how you thought your kids would go to bed an hour earlier when that happened? You know, it never quite worked out that way, that they go to bed an hour earlier. But that's what you're hoping for, they fall asleep
Okay, let's
an hour
talk
earlier.
about the kid issue before we get to the calls and texts for a second.
Yeah.
The primary argument I have heard about this through the years is the argument we just talked about, is your little kids on the way to school
very dark.
have to wait for the bus in the darkness. So unlike people who base their opinions on emotion, I called the head of the Mass Association of School Committees.
Oh, you did?
I did. It's in the Globe. You might want to read it. And it says, his name is Glenn Kuchar. I said, Glenn, the primary argument against this, and I have to say I support full-time daylight saving time, is that little kids who your people serve would have to go to school in the darkness. So are you opposed to the change? And you know what he said to me?
He said he was not.
He was not. And why was he not? Because he thought if there was more darkness in the morning, it would give impetus to the legislature to do what they should have done for years, which is move start times for schools later in the morning.
Which they should. I'm with
So
him
it's a
on that.
win-win proposition. 877-301-8970. I am in favor of full-time daylight saving time. So is Marco Rubio. So is Ed Markey. Marjorie is against anything that I support. That's the bottom. That is the bottom line. At least
Okay,
you're being honest.
let's go with Ted in Boston. Thank you for calling, Ted.
Hey, Ted.
Thank you. Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey, what's
Hi.
up? I have to say that I am in favor of keeping things the way they are.
Oh, that's too bad.
I don't like a lot of unnecessary change. I'll be 64 in March.
Yeah.
I've grown up with daylight savings time.
Saving.
And the change every year.
Yeah.
Twice a year. And it's a very familiar thing, almost a comforting thing.
Yeah.
To have the holidays is part of this time of year, that things get darker earlier. And
okay, now,
dark,
Ted, I don't want to be unkind, but let me say, you're 64, right? If we keep changing the clocks, you're not going to make it to 65. Now, and here's the reason. I am telling you, the data shows springing ahead and falling back leads to, and you know this to be true, this is indisputable or indisputable, that it causes more heart attacks. It is bad for your health, Ted, so you got to pick one or the other.
Hold on.
What?
Ted, thank you very
the
much
call.
for the call. Christine in the car just texted. She said, the director of the sleep department at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Jim, has come out against permanent daylight saving time, along with many more neurologists and sleep medicine doctors. Jim, are you a science denier?
Well,
now?
let me just say, I promised that I was going to not mention this on the show, but since this woman brought it up, the head of the sleep department is about to be indicted. So, again, I shouldn't have mentioned that on the air. By the way, there's some people, and there are tons of sleep people on the other side of the thing. It is just common sense. The reality is you don't get to enjoy the light in the morning, the extra light of an hour that comes from standard time, which is what we're about to go into. You do get to enjoy the light at the end. Can anybody tell me who supports standard time, including sort of you, if it isn't the most depressing thing to emerge from work in the pitch darkness?
I said this yesterday, but why not say it again? The one thing I do like about it being dark in the morning, I'm kind of a disorganized person. And somehow getting up in the dark makes me feel more organized. I'm getting up early. I'm attacking the day. You know, when it's still dark out, aren't I terrific?
So you have
ahead of the
daylight
game?
saving time.
Well, that's one of the things I do like about it because, you know, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. It's been dark for quite some time now,
I don't mean to pry. Do you have electricity in your house?
I do have electricity,
you know,
Jim.
What you can do is, you flick the switch.
You flick the switch.
And it gets light in the house.
But somehow going downstairs and, just having my coffee and it being in the darkness makes me feel like I'm ahead of everybody else.
I honestly like that.
In about half an hour, I'm behind everybody else again. But for that brief half hour, I feel like I'm on top of my game. Let's go to Al on the road. Thank you for calling, Al.
Welcome, Al. Hi.
Hey, guys.
Hi, what's going on?
Favorite semi-annual show.
Yeah, I think we've done it about 45 times, Al.
We're going to keep doing it till I get what I want.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
okay.
Al.
Well, you're closer now. You and Marco Rubio, on the same team.
We're
That's
very
pretty,
close. Yeah, we are.
I don't care if we keep it standard or if we move it ahead or if we split the difference and just move it ahead half an hour. But just pick a time and stick with it. Stop changing the damn clocks every 6 months. It's
By the way,
but a pain in the butt.
I think that should be the threshold where everybody starts the agreement is stop. Would you say stop changing the damn clocks every whatever number of months? I'm with you, Al. Thank you for a very wise call. You should pick daylight saving time. You know who's been
what?
relentless?
Now they mostly change automatically.
No, some
Everybody's
do.
got,
Not everybody.
Yeah, most of them do.
Well, so what? So can I say something else? What am I? Oh, Ed Markey deserves a lot of credit, by the way. While we haven't won the whole battle, Markey is responsible for the fact that at least, I think, 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something has been added to daylight saving time. So we're moving in the right direction. We're not 100% there. And obviously, if the House of Representatives votes in favor of this, Biden is, I did a little research on this when I wrote the piece for the Globe magazine. Biden has never spoken specifically about the change, but Delaware has done a lot, which is his home state, a lot of things in this direction. So I'm assuming he'd be supportive.
Permanent standard time is much better for your health. Studies have shown this, and I go to work at 6:15, and on daylight saving time, it is dark.
Yeah, it's going to be dark at daylight. And can I give again a cautious response to that guy? Get over it. I mean, that's the bottom line. You walk to your car in the darkness, and you know what the beauty is when you get out of work at the end of the day?
It's not dark
It's going
yet.
to be light outside.
Yeah,
You have to choose one or the other.
I mean, if you get out at 5 o'clock, it's pretty dark by then.
Well,
Nikki from Winchester, thank you for calling.
Hey
Jim,
there.
we have to indulge Jim with this discussion twice a year, and we're doing it today.
Thank you.
What do you think, Nikki?
Hey, Nikki, what's your deal?
Hi, guys. I love your show.
Thank you.
So I wanted to address the argument about the kids going to school in the dark.
Right.
I have 2 high schoolers. They get picked up at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
It's not dark. I mean, it's
Exactly.
later, and there's been this trend. I don't know if you guys are aware, but to start school later,
Which
That
is
was
a
the point.
great
That was the
idea.
point the head of the Mass Association of School Committees said to me. It would help the legislature
Especially
nudge in that
preteens
direction.
and teens who are like basket cases at 7 o'clock in the morning, right?
But keep going, Nikki. You're doing well.
right? Thanks. Well, I agree with you, Jim. But I mean, these kids aren't going to school at the crack of dawn anymore. I mean, in some places they are, but in most places they're not. And even with it being dark earlier or dark later, and confusing daylight savings. But even with it being darker later in the morning, it will still be light by the time these kids are going to the bus.
Nikki, that's a brilliant call.
Before you go, in Winchester, what time? You said that your kids get picked up at 8. What time does school actually start in Winchester?
So the high school and middle school starts at 8:30.
That's great. That is
great.
And the elementary school starts a little bit earlier. I want to say around 8. But
Yeah,
still
because
late.
but elementary school kids, they can get up earlier in the morning, right, than the
By the
high
way,
school kids.
the reason this matters for
Exactly.
those people who don't have school-age kids is all the science said kids should sleep later in the morning.
Yeah, you have to
'Cause they go to
drag
bed
them out
late.
of bed.
Well, it's
they're
also not good for their
exhausted.
health and
Yeah,
their
it's not good for
cognitive
their
thing
health,
and
and it's a
whatever.
big fight first thing in the morning. I mean,
Nikki, thank you.
who can
Exactly,
stand
which is why they've shifted later. Yep,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, guys. Love
Thank you,
the show.
Nikki. We really appreciate
Okay,
that. Thank you.
877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. We are switching this weekend. We're going to have an hour back, fall back, spring ahead. So you get an extra hour. And some people kind of like that. This woman in the Atlantic magazine, she calls it's a freebie hour. It's a windfall.
One
She's
day.
very excited.
One
She's going
day.
to split her minutes reading the graphic novel Paper Girls. Have you heard about this?
No.
Maybe I should look into that. for
Wait
the
a second.
weekend.
How does this woman feel when she loses an hour? Because to gain an hour, you have to lose it when you spring ahead in the spring. So how does she feel about
Well,
that?
she feels bad. Doesn't everybody hate losing an hour
And you know
in
what
the
the
spring?
solution
But
is? Don't
you're-
do
you're-
either.
Well, that's right. You could have it just at the same time all the time. But I think the satisfaction is you're going into spring. So if you're going to have to lose an hour, at least you're losing an hour going into spring instead of losing an hour going into the...
How sick are you going to be if I win this thing? If we get the House to
it's
vote
fine,
on this
Jim.
and Joe Biden is not, no, it's not.
It's just fine.
No, it is
because,
not.
Because a lot of your other endeavors have not been successful. So if you win this one, it will be fine with me. Mark and Rehoboth.
By the way,
thank
we
you for
should say
calling.
one thing before we get to Mark. While I'm
Yep.
bragging about the fact
Yep.
that the Senate vote was unanimous,
Mhm.
anybody who's read the stories, 90% of the senators had no idea they were voting on this. It was one of those unanimous vote things that apparently got slipped through, not malevolently, but it was just on the agenda and people weren't paying attention. Nevertheless, it passed the Senate unanimously.
Mark and Rehoboth, what do you think, Mark?
Hey.
Hey, first-time listener. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
We love that.
And I can't wait for this change from it because my dog wakes me up at 5:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And he'll be waking me up at 6:30. And I could keep it permanent. I'd be really happy.
Well, can't you change his clock? I mean, wouldn't that solve the problem? Yeah, I have to say, that is one of the few arguments I've ever heard against this that I don't have much of an answer to. Well, I do have an answer, actually. Doesn't the dog get acclimated over time to the time change, even if the first few days are a little shaky? Doesn't he ultimately get with the program, Mark?
I think it has to do with when the sky lightens, but actually, it'll be always later than 5:30. I'm all for that.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
Mark,
listen
I
to this.
respect your position.
This
Thanks
is-
for your first call.
This is from Joanne on YouTube, Jim.
Yes.
An old Native American saying, only a white man would think that if he cut the top of a blanket and sewed it to the bottom, he'd have a longer blanket. Applies to the time. Keep it standard.
Okay, Joanne, thank you very much for that contribution. What the hell is she talking about? I mean, obviously, if you add one, you take off.
She's talking
about blankets.
No, well, she's talking about time too, because it's 1 hour taken from there,
Take off
added
the
to
other
another.
blanket. You
Yes,
put it on the
I
other
think she had a
blanket.
brilliant point, Jim.
Well, I think the argument, and what's her name again? What was her
Joanne
name?
on
Joanne.
on
The answer to the
YouTube.
question is get a longer blanket. So when you cut, these arguments against this are so pitiful. People are so reluctant to change. You're stubborn on this too. We'll talk to him about it next month. He'll be the outgoing governor then. But Charlie Baker wants to keep things as they are. Do you know that?
Yeah, he's quirky on certain things.
Well, I think his feeling is if there's not a good reason to change something, don't. The difference is I think there is a good reason to change something, but we'll see. Oh, by the way, Maura Healey, I have to read my piece. I think
That's
it's called
right.
Maura Healey's
this could
office.
be the deciding factor for you, Jim, in
Well,
the
we don't know if
election.
she's gonna be the
whether
next
Maura's
governor
going to
yet.
be in favor of this or whether she's not going to be in favor of this.
I'm
You'll have
pretty
to
sure
find out
I called her
before
office.
Tuesday.
Well, no, I think I found out in the story. Can you read the story? Do you mind skimming it and see if I'm right? We're talking to Jamie, our colleague.
Bill and Dennis, thank you very much for calling.
Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hi, just a comment and a question for a second comment. My
Please.
first comment is that you mentioned that it would be better for adults going home from work to be in the daylight.
Yeah.
And earlier you said it wouldn't be a problem for kindergarten kids to go to school in the dark.
That's right. Excellent point, Bill.
an interesting thought. The question I have to comment on is: do you know what the sunrise is on a day that the sun sets at, say, 5 o'clock in November or December?
Yeah, like 6:30 or something.
Well, it's got to be later than that.
Well, whatever it is. And the point is, what are you trying to say, Bill?
But I think it depends on when you've got the sunlight. If you've got sunlight at 5 o'clock, if you have dark at 5 o'clock at night, there's fewer people at home. If you get sunlight, if you get a sunrise at 6 in the morning, there are more people at home. So they would the ones that would be the sunrise.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Bill.
The sun is going to
Bill's
set.
into the blanket theory there. Go ahead.
The sun is going to set today at 5:30, right? So next week at this time it will be setting at 4:30.
Okay, who is the front runner in the race for governor, even though we don't know who's going to win yet? Who's the front runner?
Maura Healey.
Oh, well, Jim Browdy interviewed her for his piece in the Globe, and here's what she said. Attorney General Maura Healey is on the Daylight Saving Time All the Time Express, saying, quote, after what the pandemic has put our residents through, I think we could all use a little more sunshine in our lives.
Well, there you go.
Thus,
that clinches the deal.
I didn't say clinch it. I just said the front runner, as of the moment, in the race for governor is on, as I said, the Daylight Saving Time All Time.
Yeah, you're always asking everybody else who they're going to vote for, Jim. Why don't you say whom you're going to vote for here?
I do not disclose my votes because.
Yeah, he just asked everybody else.
Who are you going to vote for?
Well, I think it's. I will not be voting for Jeff Deal.
You won't?
That leaves one person left, doesn't it?
Well, okay. Well, and Charlie Baker wouldn't tell us, and he's not voting for Jeff Deal, so that sort of narrows the field, I would say.
Cynthia from Brookline, thank you for calling.
Yes, Cynthia, what's up?
I would like first time caller.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you.
We love that. Thanks. Yeah.
I wanted to stay on standard. I'm an early riser. I wake up at 5 in the morning. It's been brutally dark the past few days. And when I leave work at 5 o'clock, the sun is brutal driving home.
Oh, my God.
I'm sorry.
Put down the visor, Cynthia. Go ahead.
Doesn't work all the time, does it? Doesn't work all the time.
I'm old and I'm shorter, getting shorter, and the sun is in my eyes. And I will say this also. My second toe, Jim, is bigger than my first.
That's called a Morton's toe. Thank you.
Jim has
now,
that.
Cynthia, I have very good news for you if you'll change your position. You say you're short and you're older, and it's when you're driving, etc. We, during the next pledge drive, have a Jim and Marjorie telephone book that will be available for $10 a month or $120 all at once.
Yeah.
And that will sell. You can
That's
sit
what the
right on one
Maid-Nas
of our
had.
faces.
Back when you used to have the yellow pages,
Cynthia,
they had
thanks.
great big yellow pages they could sit on, and plus the dictionary so they could see over the wheels. They
What
could
did the
drive
nuns
the car.
say about having somebody sit on your lap?
That wasn't the nuns. That was the health teacher at my high school.
What did he say?
That you better. Her name was Miss Crispo.
I'm sorry,
Miss Crispo,
the living
living
fossil.
fossil. She said that you should not sit on your boyfriend's
Why?
lap without the yellow pages between you and him. Otherwise, a rogue sperm might make you
I
pregnant.
thought rogue sperm was in the bathtub. You couldn't
They were everywhere, Jim. They were lurking around every corner. And I thought that was ridiculous. I wasn't an entire dope when I was in high school. But then all these girls kept getting pregnant, so maybe I thought there was something.
One of the other stories Marjorie objects to, but it's true.
Don't tell this again.
I am telling. No,
We're
I'm telling
talking
this
about daylight
I'm
saving.
telling you brought up the pregnancies.
Okay.
Marjorie was the only one in the
I
high
wasn't
school
the only
cheerleading
one.
team. Excuse
No,
me.
I wasn't.
How many were there?
There were
The vast majority of girls on the at Durfee High School on the high school cheerleading team.
Okay.
Marjorie was the captain. Were pregnant. Is that correct?
Well, that was not the vast majority. There were
How many?
There were several of them.
Several
there were
of them.
several of them. They
You know why?
They looked really cute
You know
in their
why?
outfits.
Rogue sperm.
Rogue sperm. That's what they all said.
Exactly.
I didn't do anything. It was a rogue sperm. Okay,
Exactly.
here's a good suggestion.
What is it?
Why can't we do 30 minutes each way and make everybody equally unhappy? This texter
They could
says,
do that.
I don't know if this is true, that North Korea is 30 minutes different from South
Oh, well, then
Korea.
we should do what they do because
But
they're
I mean,
such a
well,
role model.
it's not that they're talking about their politics. I think they're talking about just the different time
Really?
zones. Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
Oh,
Maybe we
that's
can
really
check that. North
interesting.
Korea 30 minutes from South Korea. But how about that, Jim?
No.
30 minutes each way.
No, I'm not taking
Jim
a
is not
compromise.
satisfied.
No,
Mark
we're
in
very close
Kingston.
to having this be the law. I'm going for the gold here.
What do you think, Mark?
Hi, Mark.
Mark here. Yeah, I saw an interesting reader board. It says, don't forget to turn your clock back 3 years.
Oh, that's pretty good, actually. That's pretty.
Well, I don't
maybe
get
it's
it.
not now that I think about it.
I don't get it.
Yeah,
Why-
what is the point there, Mark?
It's pre-pandemic, pre-inflation, pre all the problems we have. Go back 3 years.
I think we should turn it back 7 years. I'd feel a little better. That's a good one, Mark. Thank you very much for the call there. We appreciate it.
People were very hopeful, but that was a long time ago that they were very hopeful.
What would you say is the, I'm just looking at the text while Mark was on the phone. I would say an overwhelming percentage, what are you about to say, are on my side.
The only way you actually gain an hour, says a texter, is if you die before the spring.
That's funny.
That's very helpful, isn't it? Okay.
It's almost as good as the blanket theory. You don't have to give the number. We have calls. We only have 1 minute left in the show.
Okay.
And we're going to take one more call. And can we take a call that agrees with me so we don't have to do this other? Okay. Ellen in Westport, what's your deal? You have a minute.
Oh, you heard from me. You heard from me not too long ago.
I remember it like it was
yesterday,
yesterday, Ellen. What's up?
I'll tell you, this one's going to blow your mind, I hope. You and Marjorie leave there with a smile.
We'll see.
I think that this whole changing the time and all this other nonsense that they do, we should live like we live in Spain. Shut everything down, take a nap, go party.
Amen.
And then live the next day. Okay, how's that one for you?
Siesta City. We are totally with you, Ellen. It was a brilliant
the wild
call.
woman of Westport. Thank you for the call.
By the way, that is another topic we've done in the past. This whole notion of living a relaxed life kind of thing, eating dinner a little later, doing these afternoons off kind of thing, shutting down for August.
You were just
taking
complaining
6 weeks of
yesterday
vacation.
that nobody was working very hard after the pandemic.
That's
Jim,
how I
wasn't
felt yesterday. That's not how I feel today.
Yesterday he felt there was a disgrace for people not to be working 90 hours a week.
Can I ask you a personal favor? Would you stop quoting what I said on prior shows? Each show is a standalone entity.
All right.
You have one position on one show, and you might have another position on another. You know what that music means?
That means we are done.
We're done.
Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to people who came down to the
Thank
library.
you for coming.
Really
We appreciate it.
people that come down here. That's very nice of you. Keep with us 24/7, up with us, that is, by way of our podcast. On Monday, we're going to have our left-right political panel with Jennifer Nassour and Jesse Mermel on the final day of campaigning before the election day. That means we've got one Republican and one Democrat, both great, smart political women, plus our transit experts, Jim Aloisi and Stacey Thompson. They're going to tell us whether the Orange Line is no longer going 10 miles an hour in different parts of town, or whether it's actually picked up the pace a little bit.
I don't think it's picking up till December, is it?
I don't know. We're talking to New England EPA Administrator David Cash. Yeah, that'll be good. The Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price will be back for another edition of All Revved Up, and our food policy man, Corby Cummer. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, additional support provided by Brendan Deedy, Gia Orsino, Fernando Cervantes. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to BPL team, Angelica Marrero, Cy Patel, who fixed my computer at home. The other day, Evelyn
plugged it in. Drove to Marjorie's house to plug in her computer.
That's not entirely true. It's close.
It's close.
Evelyn Brito and Glenn Heath, thank you very much for them coming down here. Jim is not on TV tonight.
No, but can I say
Riley
one thing? A lot of people still confused about some of the ballot questions. Our colleagues have done great work on this stuff.
That's right.
Go to gbhnews.org. A lot of reporting, a lot of stuff that will help you clarify, if you haven't voted, what you should do on 1 through 4.
Yeah, especially if you're confused about 2 and 3, which a lot of people are. They're explained very well there.
They are.
Okay, I'm Marjorie Egan.
Okay, I'm Jim Browding.
Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you can tune in again on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.
Classical.org. Just shy of 2 o'clock on this Friday afternoon. I'm Greg Farisi. Thanks for being here with me. Today we'll enjoy the Jubilee Overture by Raff, also Wolf Ferrari's The Backward Women Overture, and Foray at the Afternoon Reset. But first, I've got the Moderato from Philidor's Second Sinfonia with violinist Elizabeth Wallfish and Ars Antiqua.